this is still collating from the future. Just a quick disclaimer before we continue with the review. This was recorded before Dan started doing the promotional round interviews for this film. Some of our questions, concerns, and critiques during this review have been addressed in those later interviews. And all of them, of course, you can find on AvP Galaxy. Things like the fact that the film was first conceived as a show, but since that's a completely different department over at 20th, Dan doubted it would get approved. So because he still wanted to work with Steve Aspel and the rest of the team over at 20th Century that he got to know during the filming of Prey, he decided on doing an anthology film instead. Another thing was, he clarified that what we see in Killer of Killers represents just one clan and doesn't necessarily reflect on all predators behaving that way. Lastly, in the World War II segment, our disbelief at the plausibility of the stunt Torres pulls on the wing of the plane is actually based on a real event that happened during World War II, which we did not know at the time. Slightly different circumstances, but a basis in reality for such a stunt did exist. Getting that disclaimer out of the way, let's return to the review.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alien vs. Predator Galaxy podcast, the original Alien and Predator podcast. This is regular host Aaron Percival, aka Corporal Hicks, and with me are my fellow displaced victors, time-displaced victors.
Adam Zeller, aka Ridgetop.
Eric Adams, aka Xenomorphine.
Greg, also known as Still Collating.
This is episode 212 of the podcast. And is this one you guys really expected we'd be doing recently? If somebody just said a year ago, would you have thought we'd be doing this?
Well,
How long have we known
not
about
a year
this?
ago. We knew about this since last fall, I believe, is when that casting information came out. Am I right?
But when was it public? We knew about this a lot earlier than everybody else did.
Right. I think we knew about this last fall. I'd have to go back and look, though. I'm not sure.
Okay, but it was officially announced
Earlier this year, this spring.
Yes, so it's not been known about for long at all.
Well, the first time, Steve Aspel was the first one to talk about it publicly, the head of 20th Century Studios, when he brought it up, when he was talking about the franchise future plans and stuff.
It was inevitable some sort of animated project would occur at some point. It was just, when would it happen?
So Steve Aspel dropped this news 7 months ago until it was finally announced 1 whole month ago in April.
Really? Wow.
No, that's not 1 whole month. That's 2 months.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
I was like, wait.
So we've known about this for 2 months officially, but it's been rumoured for 7 months. And it's a thrill to actually be here, being able to talk about a surprise, in quotation marks, Predator film, especially when we've got another one 5 months away,
Yep.
a theatrical one.
The first of 2 review podcasts for Predator movies this year. And that's new.
Yeah, can't think we'd have ever expected to have said that at all. I never would have banked on that. Now, I have no idea how anybody here, other than Greg, in the vaguest of terms, feels about this film. So I'm very curious as to how everybody's reacted to it. General reception seems to be pretty positive, critically and fandom. I mean, at least Rotten Tomatoes has 97% on critics, 90% on the popcorn meter. On IMDb, it's currently sat at 7.8 out of 10. And on our message boards, it is currently...
That's the only metric that matters, the AvP Galaxy message
True,
boards.
AvP Galaxy is currently sitting on 41.1%. Believe it was amazing, a 5 out of 5. 31.4% believe it was 4 out of 5. It was good and it was enjoyable. And everything else barely adds up to anything, like 20%. So massively, overwhelmingly positive response to this film. Casper in the chat, this is being recorded live for our Patreon viewers. Casper in the chat says 10 out of 10 and I will die on that hill. So who wishes to go first on this?
I will go first.
Okay.
So I've seen the movie twice. We stayed up for it to drop on Hulu, my girlfriend and I, and watched it. Both enjoyed it. The following day, we had a watch party with some friends, and we all enjoyed it. I don't know if I enjoyed it probably quite as much as you all. I still am very positive about it. I had a few issues with it, but they come from typical, fan lore places. I think overall, this is a really solid film. We've been wanting an animated project in these franchises for the longest time. There were a few times they almost got off the ground, but didn't. And one's still in limbo, one big one.
It could stay in there.
I agree to disagree on that, but it's nice to finally see one. And I think this is, it's already doing really well. I saw it was number 1 on Hulu. I think it's the highest rated in the franchise as far as Rotten Tomatoes goes. It's not better than Prey, guys, but I'm glad it's getting really good reviews. A lot of the elements are solid. The animation style is unique, how it's the first film completely an Unreal Engine of this kind, and it does some interesting things with the frame rate, which I've heard some differing opinions on, if people like or dislike that. The music I thought was great. I thought Benjamin Wallfisch did a really good job on this. It's cool to have a composer move from Alien to Predator for the first time. So yeah, overall, I am mostly positive. I think it's really the ending sequence of the film, which only kind of half worked for me and pulled it back for me a bit. So for me, I believe I'm about an 8 out of 10. It's still solid. I'm positive about it. It's just there were a few things that brought it down a little bit for me. But overall, I found it quite enjoyable.
Eric, do you want to risk going next?
No.
Okay, well, the first thing as a visceral reaction when I've watched it and finished it was, hell yeah, I was really happy with it. It was more or less completely in style what I expected it would be. And it also was a bit better in other senses because generally I try to have lower expectations, even though I'm not really good at managing those expectations all the time. But I tried being a bit more moderate in what could we happen to see from the first animated Predator anthology film. So not only is it the first animated film in Alien or Predator franchise, it's the first anthology type film there. So a lot of new things were being experimented with, and I was apprehensive to see. But I was so extremely satisfied with it. I felt very connected with most of the characters. I was very happy with how the Predators were generally portrayed. I do have here and there a few nitpicks, little details, what I wish maybe was different, or in future installments, different elements to be approached in various ways. But overall, I was extremely satisfied with it. I felt like I spent a good half an hour of my time, and I felt the immediate need to rewatch it. I felt that for me, it's very rewatchable. I didn't have the time, etc. I haven't watched it a second time yet, but I am very, very itchy to see it again. And I find it such a fun film, and the reaction when it ended for me was, I want to see more of animated Predator films, be it in anthology forms or just one at a time in a different time period. I was just cheering on most of the film to see what happens next, what the characters will do. And even though there are some questionable moments here and there, it was overall so enjoyable that it helped me suspend my disbelief and overlook some minor flaws here and there. So I was extremely happy with it.
Go on, Eric.
Well, the animation style is always going to be subjective, and it was very heavily stylized in places. I rewatched Prey immediately before this. I've always loved Prey. Rewatching it reminded me how much I loved it. Not just because it was the most recent, but because it's done by, got Dan Trachtenberg involved in this one. However, where this is, I'd say firstly, fighting choreography is very well done, especially in the Japanese chapter. But fighting choreography does not a good Predator film make. And where this was let down for me overwhelmingly was the writing and storytelling. Not good. It's okay. Didn't do anything for me as a whole. Not a fan. But I don't hate it, but no, didn't like this.
Whoa, wait. You didn't like this movie?
No, it's there for me. I didn't feel compelled by it.
Wow, okay.
Like, there were moments which I could tell, like, it's full of money shots, but it's like action sequences that are loosely strung together for me. I didn't feel like, oh, I want to see more of that character. There were parts that were outright ridiculous. Yeah, it just didn't do anything for me. It's no Prey. I loved Prey. I will continue to love Prey. But this, no, it really didn't. It didn't hit any of what I look for in a Predator film, and the Predators were more like Warhammer orcs. They weren't what Predators should be. So, yeah, this was kind of like at the mark of the Predator for me, unfortunately.
Ooh.
But yeah, I mean, your mileage may vary. That's my view. I don't think it's a bad thing. I wasn't impressed by it.
So we have more varied opinions than I expected. I thought I was going to be the lowest for sure.
I don't want to say I agree with Eric.
You never do. This is why I wanted to go last, because I thought I'm going to poison the well, because I'd seen Greg say, I love it
But
on
I
Discord.
have to cushion you. I fully expect to have to cushion you in the nicest of way. But I'm not massively enthralled by it either. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it. I thought it was solid enough, and it came out swinging, which I absolutely fucking appreciate, and I enjoyed it. But it essentially boils down to 4 20-minute episodes of narrative. And I think that time was insufficient for the stories. You know, one of the comments that has been said in some of the reviews has been, each segment could have been its own film. And I completely agree, but only because I think that 20 minutes was to the detriments of stuff. Like, I'm going to sound like I hate it, but I don't. I just think it could have been better. Like, I think it starts off at its weakest. I think S.H.I.E.L.D. is the weakest aspect of story in there. You know, the whole revenge isn't as sweet as it appears to you be thing is kind of stereotypical at this point. Sword is probably the strongest for me, and that also frustrates me because in a way the absolute lack of dialogue in there is fascinating because you're thinking about all the motivations of the characters. I just don't fucking understand. Nothing in my head could make sense of their motivation of what was going off, and I couldn't get on with it. I felt like the bullet was too short. I didn't understand exactly what was going off with Torres. And I was like, oh, so he did end up being a pilot. No, he's not a pilot. That's why they're angry at him. And then the end. The end, I think, is probably the more controversial aspect of the thing from a Predator fan point of view, because the implications for the wider lore are massive. You know, it's very much like a bunch of Dark Horse series is brought to life. And I say that in a nice way, and I do mean that as a positive for the thing. You know, it went swinging, it did some concepts. It tried to do different things with the narrative. You know, I loved the narrative frame of it. I really enjoyed this aspect of fading out of the first survivor to find the back of the second survivor. I assumed it was a ship, but it can't have been a ship because they just opened to the cage on the planet. I really liked that framing. I thought it was fantastic, but I'll be interested to hear everybody's thoughts on the end. I enjoyed it. I did. I think it was probably like a 7 out of 10 for me.
I assume we're doing spoilers for this.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Spoilers, everybody, spoilers.
Eric, you didn't give a score. What's yours?
5, maybe 6 out of 10. What might move it up is some of the fight choreography, but I'm like Aaron. I know they talked about they were doing this as individual things, and then they pitched it as, well, hang on, we can link them all together. But I think it would have been better if they hadn't. And I think if they'd have just done it like, I don't know, Rites of the Hunt or something, and they'd just been individual, and they'd fleshed them out a bit more, it would have helped, especially with Bullet, because like Aaron says, what is this guy meant to be? No, he's there as a mechanic, but he's like saying, no, I want to be a pilot, let me fly. And he hasn't
I want to know when he learned to fly as well.
Yeah.
what
he
happened?
hasn't gone through anything. He doesn't know how to navigate or radio commands. He just likes to fly.
But as far as we know, he can't fly.
But
until
he can't fly because they say you need to know how to be a mechanic on your plane. But I mean, pilots and mechanics are actually two different things, and he makes that point.
They say what pilot knows how to repair his own plane.
Yeah, he's in an aircraft carrier. He is there as a mechanic. He is an engineer. My father was in the Royal Air Force as an engineer. He did Vulcan bombers and stuff. You'd have asked him to be a navigator or a pilot.
Yeah, but they're not letting him fly because he can't fix the engine, which
doesn't make sense,
right?
Because if especially in World War II, you would have. No.
If he is a pilot, then why are they so angry at him for being in a combat zone when he gets up in the air?
Yeah.
So it seems to be like he is a pilot that's trying to fix his own plane, and it's unusual because he can fix a pilot who can fix his own plane, even though he can't. Because then, as he says, I'm not a mechanic. I didn't quite understand what was going off with him in that.
See, that went to the heart of what I felt about as it got to like the last of the 3 segments, which was that one, I think. I was very much thinking, yeah, this feels like cutscenes from a video game, which there's nothing wrong with them. They're great, but they are there to kind of introduce the next segment of the game and you play through it. But they're very much money shot, money shot, money shot. These felt like that kind of thing. And I think it might have been still, I don't know, but somebody said the Viking one felt like a quick time action scene in a video game. And I kind of went, kind of. And this is that kind of, what would a video game about World War II be? Oh, you have to fix your own plane and then you fly the plane. But that wasn't how reality was. And it felt very kind of video gamey throughout the whole thing. And that's not necessarily a problem because it is, it's an animation thing. You're looking for predator action. But like even in the Japanese thing, they've gone with the stereotype of what a ninja is. That wasn't what a ninja typically was. But people wanted predator or ninja action and they dreamed of what happened in that being up there. We've now got that. But it's one of those things where it doesn't really hold up to much scrutiny in terms of storytelling. And that's why I'm led with this. The storytelling and the writing is where it lets out. The visuals can be great unless you're not too invested in that kind of Predzilla kind of thing, because they kept doing that. And yeah, I think a lot of people's, the big, massive Predator, the big, bulky one in Vikings.
I mean, there's only the one bulky one. The Predator should be big.
That big?
Predator should be big, as in, the feralish one from the samurai period.
But this was like
big.
Upgrade in the Predator.
I think that you can chalk that up to it being stylized for that sequence. I mean, Hunting Ground showed concept art of those 2 Predators coming to the game, and that big Viking one was much more kind of just a normal hulking Predator size. So I think you have to chalk some of it just to the stylized nature of the movie. But before we move on, Greg, we didn't get a score from you. So just so we have everybody, what is your score?
Again, for me, I kind of feel and appreciate it for what it is in the sense that it gave me exactly what I was expecting from it in a sense. And so for me, I would go, I don't know, it's not perfect, but I enjoyed it so much for what it is that somewhere between, I don't know, 8.5 or 9 out of 10. For me, it was fun. It was diverse in visuals. And I would agree with what Eric said that yes, some of the details in the storytelling were a bit confusing here and there, but I enjoyed the characters and I enjoyed the conclusions of the characters in each of those segments, the least in the third one, but in the first and second and the fourth one, I really enjoyed the kind of ending conclusions and scenes that all of the characters got there. It was fun and I felt an emotional connection with them in that sense. So I just want to put out there that one of the interesting things I have seen about people commenting about Killer of Killers is that even though most seem to agree that the second is the best, the one with a ninja, the sword short, but a lot are still mentioning completely different of those 3 initial segments as being their favorite. Some say the first, some say the third, the majority seem to say the second, but I do like that there is something for everyone there. So I don't know. I just felt very satisfied after watching it. So that's my take.
You are allowed to like it.
Most people do. Like, this podcast is already not what I expected in terms of opinions here, because it's getting rave reviews. And I think on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score isn't far behind that. So yeah, you guys, I thought you guys would be more in line with those opinions. So this is interesting.
I think it's like a meal, do you feel satisfied by what you've eaten? And you can have the identical meal eaten by 2 or 3 different people and they will have different opinions about how that. To me, I did not feel satisfied, but other people will be. And, I admit I'm in probably the minority opinion from what I've read. But yeah, that is my opinion, unfortunately. And I really wanted to like it because I love Prey, but it was missing a lot of the suspense and stuff that Prey brought. And as I said a few moments ago, I do think if each segment had more time to be fleshed out, it would have definitely helped so much. And it is, I can see the allure with them thinking, if we have that extra piece to put them into one single project, it'll feel well-rounded. But I didn't like how that end piece was anyway. So I would have automatically liked it more anyway.
Yeah, and I also adore Prey. Like, and there's an element of that in this to talk about. Maybe we'll bring that up in a bit. But yeah, I'm glad it's doing well. It's kind of like Alien Romulus, right? I believe I gave Alien Romulus a 7 because I had issues with it. Overall, I really liked it.
Whereas I absolutely fucking adore Romulus. I absolutely adore that film.
Yeah. And, I had issues with it, but I saw it 5 times and I'm really happy it did as well as it did and resonated with most audiences. So I feel like in our critiques, we're never just, unless it's like really merited, like The Predator, right? We're never just stomping on a movie. But yeah, no, overall, I'd say I'm mostly...
But yeah, to that point, I do absolutely disagree with Eric there and do not rate this film on par with The Predator in the slightest. I think that is a huge slap in the face, Eric. I'm sorry. I cannot agree with you at all there.
Yeah, I get that. I do think, weirdly, some parts of this do strike a similar tone with The Predator. I think that if people go back after this and rewatch The Predator, I think a lot of people actually go, actually, it's not quite as bad as I thought.
Are you sure it's not just because of the humorous
parts of that? Yeah, especially in the gladiator sequence, you get, what's his name, Torres, and he was, it was very much Attack of the Clones. But they were doing that kind of Obi-Wan and Anakin vibe with the comedy sidekick thing, and especially a guy from World War II, and he's surrounded by monsters. He's not going to be quipping like fucking Buffy Summers. And that's how it felt like a cartoonish thing. It felt The Predator.
I didn't talk about the style, actually, and I do just want to mention that I also found the frame rate choppiness thing a little bit weird at times. But in general, I really like the animation style. The technical aspect of it being people who keep saying it feels like a video game cutscene, it was built and filmed in Unreal, which I don't know if that speaks to that sensation, but I really liked the style. I actually really liked this painterly kind of take that they were going for. It's not what I imagined when I thought of an animated Predator thing, because I always thought of something a lot more stylized, leaning into the anime.
2D.
Yeah. The very heavily stylized Japanese anime kind of approach, but it never put me off of Killer when we actually got to see some footage. I do think it looks very interesting. Casper in the comments, is talking about the League of Legends style, which I think a lot of people compared it to initially.
The adaptation of that, Arcane, was pretty acclaimed, and if I could list some inspirations, at least I assumed in this, it would be films like Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, or Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which do a lot of playing around with the frame rate. It seems like the higher the action, the lower the frame rate. And Arcane, visually, it kind of combines those elements of 2D and 3D, like as a very painterly style, but it still looks 3D. And that's how I felt this one looked. I believe Dan Trachtenberg said they were going for like concept art brought to life kind of look. So it is a very interesting style. I have heard from some other friends that thought the frame rate variations were a bit jarring in this, that it was hard for them to keep up with the action given the frame rate. Overall, it didn't bother me. At times, the frame rate did seem a little slow, but overall, it wasn't a big deal for me.
But the style in general, the visual look to the film, I quite enjoyed. I did very much like it. And because I love all the designs of the Predator, even the brute one. I was looking at it and I'm going, is this some sort of commentary on the chads that walk around with those kind of neck muscles as to the approach of him? I do think he was the weakest interpretation of the Predators in terms of characterization. So I think the film starts off on a bad foot for me, because I do think I did not massively enjoy The Shield, in part because of that. But yeah. Shall we start by talking of The Shield? Should we go through it in an episodic nature?
Yeah. It has a little more relevance to me because we used to think it was Swedish. Now I think it's Norwegian. So I've got that kind of Scandinavian heritage. So I was a little more interested in hearing they were going to do Viking.
I think it's one of those eras that absolutely screams the Predator, because of the warrior nature of the Viking culture. I actually really liked how it started off on the boats and this talk of Odin. So I like that kind of thing. I liked the character. This is one of those things where I really like the film, but I think I'm a bit more harsh on it because I think there was so much more there to be had. That's where I'm kind of struggling on my opinion on the film. This idea of the revenge storyline, I feel like it's a bit too done to death, should I say. And even though I enjoyed her torturing the guy As somebody who hates gore porn, I enjoy a bit of torture in my films anyway. I just don't want to see too much blood. But I liked, even though I feel like the story is done too much, I did like how they took it, because I did find it very satisfying in the fourth act. You know, when she's like, "Do not avenge me," you know, breaks the cycle of, not abuse, but cycle of
vengeance.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it's
Cycle of
interesting how she contextualizes her quest for revenge as like the monster inside her. And we kind of get a different impression of that when we watch the trailer for the film, right? We think she's talking about the predator and they've dealt with it before or something like that. But she's talking about how the revenge created a monster inside of her. And I thought the relationship between her and her son Anders was really interesting. How, you know, like you said, Aaron, they're torturing this guy to get information about the leader of this clan they're after. And he starts taunting the boy and intimidating him like, "Oh, if you're going to kill someone unarmed, you're not going to go to Valhalla." And she just takes him out to shut him up. And essentially her son returns the favor later when she's facing the one who killed her father. And he starts verbally taunting her. And she's kind of caught in a moment with that, and then her son ends up killing him. So I thought that was a nice kind of him helping her out just as she helped him out. So I did really enjoy the characters in this one.
I liked how Soren, the bad guy, did anybody else get Spanish sort of pirate vibes off him?
Yeah, is that like, I didn't know if he was supposed to be a different Viking clan or some other ethnicity, or
Yeah, when I first saw him in the flashbacks, I was like, he looks like a pirate, or, you know, sort of conquistador or whatever there. So I'm not quite sure how that fits in.
I thought it was like the James Earl Jones character in Conan. They were kind of going for that, "Oh, you think I killed all your people, but for me it was just a Tuesday" kind of thing. He didn't feel like his own character. He felt like a kind of amalgam of those kind of.
But I really liked how he was like, "Who are you?" So, you know, because it took all the wind out of her sails, and I like that approach. And also her, Ander, you know, in his sort of defense of her, it puts him directly in the target for the predator. He's the first sort of victim, not victim because he doesn't kill him, but he's the first target that the brute predator has at that point, or because of his defense. The Wanna? Or do you guys want to talk about that story aspect a bit more?
I would like to. Personally, I agree there with Adam quite a bit, that I really felt maybe the largest emotional connection to this first story. To me, it felt completely natural and realistic in the sense, throughout history, one of the driving forces are always revenge stories. People just, you kill mine, I want to kill yours, and the endless cycle of that. That's unfortunately the most natural thing throughout history, very sadly. But I found that beginning setup quite nice, but I found it very interesting how our main character there, Ursa, I think, how she portrayed the character there, how protective she was of her son there. And I don't know, I found her very motivating and engaging. I liked her even more, quite a bit more, in that fourth act, with her getting to terms with what should she do, what shouldn't, and by the end, when she was like, I may be screwed up here, but my boys escaped, at least. That kind of gut punched me, emotionally. So that was nice.
I agree with you there. I do really like how every single one of the characters, I guess, other than Torres, really. What did we say her name was? Ursa. Ursa and the Japanese guy. I really liked how what happened in their stories did influence the way they behaved in the fourth one. There was some genuine development and progression of their characters in the end of that. So to see her pivot from the desperation of revenge, because it's still there in that fourth act, she's like, I will kill you, Grendel King, which I absolutely loved that the Viking portion referred to the predators as Grendel. I love that. It's still there, but she does then eventually pivot once Torres reminds her of her son with that deflection moment. I do like that. I did think that was satisfying. Especially, again, I need to look up the Japanese character's name. I can't remember what it was.
Well, I think it's hard for us to guess because there was almost no dialogue, so they don't even refer to each other with names.
Oh, yeah, you are right. They're Kenji and Kiyoshi, according to the credits. I don't know which one survived, but the surviving Predator character, I liked his whole thing of, we got to work together, he's already figured it out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was nice there, but regarding the Shield story, I even like Zoran there at the end, he realized, he's going to die, but he was taking the piss out of her in the sense, if I'm going to go down, I'm not going to just stand there and not give you crap. I liked how at first it started very classical villainy in the sense like, oh, who are you? I didn't even care, blah, blah, blah. But at the end, before the son took him out, when he was like, well, every good Viking child would know that you should have tried to get revenge on me right there and then, but you didn't. So are you a coward, et cetera, et cetera. So that was kind of an interesting plot thread that got stopped there at the last minute. But even though the Predator design then later came in and he went a fun, brutal mode, I also enjoyed that Predator to some extent. I like when my Predators are more armored and yes, use stealth and all of those elements that I'm sure Erica will later emphasize that are kind of missing from Dan's Predators. But disregarding that, I like the gadget. I like even how that Predator fought. It wasn't slow, brutish in that sense. It was basically power punches, yes, but there were some beautiful animations when the Predator, especially when he's on ice there and in the shipyard and just blasting away to see where is she. There were some beautiful frames how the Predator turned and the dreadlocks just moved. It felt the best that you can expect from something animated. Those scenes were posed very well. Contextually, I'm now just thinking out loud that, well, one of the reasons maybe that I enjoyed Killer of Killers so much is because I've been watching some other recent shows that I haven't been enjoying so much that felt a lot more rushed. And here I felt like at least something developed and something emotionally struck a chord with me there. And I've watched a few other recent modern anthology series like The Last of Love, Death and Robots and stuff where I felt very mixed. So seeing something like this, even though of course, I would have liked if all of the stories had been longer, had been developed into their own films. The little we got was enough for me to form some initial connection there. So I really liked how the first story started with the shield, how that shield represents, she isn't somebody who is attacking in the classical way. She uses the shield as defense and greatly as offense. So even when in the fourth part, they give all of the characters those
weapons of your tribe.
Yeah, almost stereotypically, like, this is what we think you might use. She starts using that, but at the end, she's like, I don't need these. I don't want this. I'm going to take something shield-like. So she takes the base, and I love that.
I think she loses her axe in that last fight more than gives it up. I think it gets embedded in or snapped or something. Sarah brings up a very relevant point in the chat. This is talking about the vengeance aspect of the story. For me, I found it really sad. The monster is just an old man now, and she's made it her life's mission to find and kill him. So her turn to recognize really being the monster. And so her turn to recognizing.
Yeah, when she realized that the monster is inside of her in that sense.
Oh, it's a self-reflection of it being.
No. Well, it's an interesting moment at the end, too, when she loses her son. And, you know, it's hard to really have impactful emotional moments, I think, in animated features. And, well, I don't know, maybe some might jab at me for that. But it seems to, you know, be a delicate balance with that. And this film pulled it off, I feel like. And her son asks her if she killed the monster. And it's one of those open to interpretation things where it's like, is he literally asking her if she killed the big thing that she was fighting or if she killed this force of revenge inside of her?
Yeah, I agree with
with
Adam. Yeah, that also emotionally spoke to me as well. And when she finished fighting the Predator under the water, how she literally gets out of there without that bloody marking.
And washes it off his face as well. Yeah, yes. I liked that a lot, you know, because it is very much like she's trying to wash the vengeance off him, you know, wash the commitment off him, because her mark on her face is obviously her father indebting this act, this commitment to avenging him. And she'd done the exact same thing to her son earlier. So yeah, I really liked that too.
I also just kind of realized that all three of these stories have fatherly expectations as a core theme to them.
Yeah, true. Every single one of them.
Interesting, yeah. Didn't see that.
I guess even the end, if you think of the Warlord Predator as some sort of patriarchal figure at the end of it, and his expectation is you motherfuckers will kill each other until there's only one of you left.
I also liked how it's a common thing with all of these shorts there, which is a relatively big plus for me there, because I was expecting that this was going to be an element that was going to be screwed up most commonly and most easily. But all of the predators are dealt with by using the environment, by intelligence, in the sense that all of the characters realize we are not a match for this thing either alone or just brute forcing our way. We have to think deceptively, and we need to use the environment as an advantage there. And especially in that first one, the shield, I liked how she uses that anchor and how she thinks on the spot and tries to wrap it around the predator and use its own gadgets against him. So I thought that was very, very cool and smart, quick thinking that was well utilized in, again, such a short space.
In the same vein, though, all three of these sequences end with the predator being defeated by its own gadget, and Prey, that's how it was also defeated. So it does feel like a bit of a repeat tactic at this point, honestly.
Well, yeah, exactly. I was going to say, to be fair, that's not exactly how it happens. But yes, it contributes towards it in every single one. And I think that's, we've been sat here. I've started off going, I'm a little bit dissatisfied with it. But then as we've been talking through this, and I'm like, yeah, I actually really like the thematic aspects of what happens with Ursa. I really like how the Predator is defeated in this as well, in terms of it being her being very smart. But again, it all comes back to that everything feels a little bit too condensed aspect of them all being 20-minute stories. So while I really, really liked the final fight sequence of this thing, I thought it was really a cool way to do it. It's in the ice, you trap her down. But the thing that got me during this sequence was when she starts crawling up the thing and pulls up the anchor. And I went, wait, when did she notice this? When did this become her plan? Why is the Predator shooting all this cover when he hadn't had a glimpse of her walking around bits? So this is where I'm like, this is too condensed. This is them getting to the final fight sequence of every single one of the films. It was the final battle of Predator. It was the final battle of Predator. It was that condensed that I think they didn't have the time to really set up or necessarily earn, in quotation marks, that victory. So while, yeah, I really thought it was smart, I was like, but when did she notice this? I had to rewind it to see if they showed us her looking up and seeing the anchor or something and cottoning on to it. But as a concept, as a way to defeat the Predator in that situation, drowning him around the anchor and using his weaponry against her. Using his weaponry against him, I really liked that. That's another thing. Talked about the Predator's designs. One of the things I've always gone on about is I want to see some maimed predators who replace their missing limbs with some motherfucking weapon of some sort. So I did enjoy starting the film off with this weird-ass power gravity gun thing that, I don't think I've ever seen any hint of that at all in any of the other Predator lore. So that was a really interesting addition, definitely.
I agree. The weapon was cool, but yeah, I also agree with you that at times these sequences felt a bit too condensed. That comes up again later for me in the World War II sequence where he's like, oh, they only see heat. I'm like, how did you figure this out?
Well, he was going for the fuel tank which exploded, but he's like a completely average guy from World War II. Guided weapons weren't really they existed, but by the average Joe, they wouldn't have been known. So that was a bit contrived. He should have just assumed, oh, it just missed me. But it was a way for the episode to be written by, oh, this is how the character knows it's after heat. But realistically, yeah, he wouldn't have figured out that's how they see in heat. So
yeah, I agree in terms of that last one.
But one question I was going to ask you guys that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. Would you have preferred these all just be standalone anthologies that don't come together at the end? Because right after this first one, we see it kind of fades to her in a holding cell. So right off the bat, we know these stories are going to be pretty interconnected because the camera's on her and it switches to our next protagonist in this feudal Japan sequence. So really right after the first sequence, we know it's going to come together in the end. And I've heard, I think it was Mike's Monsters told me he wishes it would have just been a surprise at the end that they all come together, that it didn't kind of foreshadow this. But I've also heard, and for me, I kind of feel like maybe this would have been stronger if, like you said, Aaron, these stories have a little bit more room to breathe, and it's just these three stories without the whole convergence at the end.
I'm going to take this one first, and I'm sorry to Greg and Eric for jumping in so much here. I wish it would have been a TV show. I wish it would have been maybe not quite movies. Maybe that's unfair to expect of Fox or Dan or the team and the budget or whatever. But maybe like just twice as long. Give us 40-minute episodes, animated episodes to build up. Give us more time with the characters. Give us more time with the predators, because that is the thing that's another aspect of this where I feel like it's to the detriment, because we don't get to spend time with the predators being predators. There's a single shot in the first sequence of the Brute watching them at the camp, and that's that. I suppose the implication is that no, they watch them during the initial battle sequence, but you don't get to see them be predators. You don't get to see some earlier bits of them. Well, no, that's a lie, because the Predator massacres, it tries to. The film tries to show us the Predators being victorious first in each of the segments, but it is still so condensed. So, in that first one, we do get to see him show up, massacre a bunch of people before he dies 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later, whatever it is. But it is, again, very condensed. So you don't get to see a lot of them winning. And it's funny that this annoyed me in the film, because I was one of the people where, when Prey came out and everybody's going, I'm sick of seeing the Predator always lose. How are they always major hunting alien guy and he loses in every film? I was one of the people that was like, shut up. He's an antagonist of the film. Of course he's going to die. But, all the films get to show us him being victorious through a longer frame of time. And we get to see more of the methods. We get to see more of the intelligence. And that is something that I think, again, the condensed nature of the film is to its detriment. It's to the Predator's detriment, because, he shows up, he kills a room full of people, and then he's dead 5 minutes later. And that happens throughout. I think that's why I like the Japanese one more, because I feel like we get to spend more time with the Predator. We get to see him observing more. We get to see him literally in the room with the battle taking place between the brothers. I really like the Japanese one. That is my favorite one of the lot, and I think it's genuinely a really good piece of Predator lore, Predator fiction. But yes, I think I would have much preferred them to have more time. I liked the framing. So if it was to say it'd have been an episode, a 40-minute episode, and it still ends on that shot of her in the prison, the cell, and then you see, the Japanese guys back, and then you fade out, and then it starts the next episode with how it did, and it keeps going like that. I think that would have been fine. I actually really liked the framing of it. I thought it was very, very intelligent and a very good way of doing it. Anyway, Greg, Eric, who would like to go next? How would you have preferred it to be handled? Or were you happy with it?
I just like to connect with what you said there, that I agree that I probably would have enjoyed this even more if it was something like a TV show where each segment was twice as long, 40-minute segments, episode, and then at the end, the fourth episode would be that, the final mixing of them all. I also agree that I didn't even think about that the reveal is spoiled, that they're all going to connect with each other because we've seen the other character. I was like, oh, okay, that's going to happen. But since everything was going at such a fast pace, I didn't even get kind of time to think about, oh, is that the best route or not? I was just along for the ride, basically, at that point. I do see the point or what Adam said, that it could maybe be an interesting thing to not reveal that they are connected until that very last part. It could have been an interesting twist there. But again, especially for somebody who likes to rewatch things again and again and again, after that very first time you've watched it, there's no more surprise there. So you're going to know they're going to connect. So I just thought it was just thematically interesting and setting up that, how is it possible that people from other time periods are connecting here? It was more of a setup for that final fourth part. So I think that at the same time, that was a good trade-off there. But just to return to what Aaron said, I do agree with the tempo of all of these shorter episodic materials, that it is very easy actually it's kind of blink and you'll miss it, because so much is happening in a short time frame, and then you have another and another, that it is kind of easy to miss maybe some details, or to actually completely validly feel subjectively that we haven't had enough time spent with this or that. So yeah, even though the first Predator watched them at the campfire, we see it invisible in the trees, and then later we see how it's scanning the battlefield after Ursa and her gang rip apart Zoran's people, and was it was there actually for each of the battle scenes, but you don't really get enough time to feel all of that because it keeps on going to the next. So I understand that can be a bit frustrating there. I did like it, how in that episode and in the Samurai one, it wasn't really so much seen with Torres, but that you see the Predators take their time in the sense that they're watching the battles. And I felt like, oh, they must be recording this and sending the good bits to their Predator YouTube back home or something. Like, let's see how fun this can end, and the winners who are left standing there, I will take them on in that sense. So yeah, that was kind of hinted at in the first one, but especially in the second Samurai one, the sword short there. So I completely understand why that one felt more satisfying in that department.
Go on, Eric.
Well, I think probably it's 50% to do with the pitch, why they went for a single production, but also I think 50% of it might have been Disney getting mixed signals over the recent Star Wars TV productions, because you often hear the criticism of they should have just taken all the Kenobi episodes, just make them a single TV movie, all the episodes of Ahsoka, just make them a single, and then cut out a lot of the kind of fat from the scripts. But I think here you're dealing with anthologies, and that fits the episodic nature format far better. However, that's made me think of a slight flaw or missed opportunity with Prey that kind of came back in here when Aaron was mentioning about Grendel. With Prey, when we were talking about our reviews of that, and I said, or even in the lead up to it, I said, oh, wow, there's, Native American folklore and legends. They're so rich with stuff. They've got stuff about star people coming from the sky and actual ships, and that you could use so much. And then in Prey, you just had a very kind of offhand reference to demons or something, and that was it. And I thought, it's such a shame, because one of the best scenes in the original Predator is when Anna is talking about the demons who make trophies of men. And it happens at that moment when they're just sitting around and doing nothing. And it really helped to keep the tension high. And in here, okay, you get Grendel mentioned. Even though it mentions Scandinavian people, it's not a Scandinavian poem. It is English. So they wouldn't have been aware of it in that part of the world.
Beowulf, isn't it?
Yeah, Beowulf. And it was actually written over a century after the year 841. So they had no way of Grendel. It wouldn't have been an applicable reference. However, there was a hell of a lot of Viking mythology they could have referred to. So much in the way of monsters and things, and they didn't do it. Japan was another massive opportunity for that. Japan doesn't just have like ghost stories. It has what they call, I don't know how it's pronounced, but yokai. And they are specifically not ghosts, but monsters. And they have some really like Lovecraftian things, like giant spider women that cocoon samurai. And they could have used that in a couple of like samurai guards or whatever they were talking. And they were talking about yokai. And, oh, yes, my uncle went to hunt one of them. And he found it. And he said, oh, he killed him. He said, no, its head was gone. Oh, so he killed it. He said, no, but something took its head. And then and then there was lightning in the sky or something like that could have set the tone. And it uses the cultural and historical setting as context that moves that forward. And it's giving back the Predator that mythological thing. And then at the end of this, we've had, even in Requiem, which I'm not a fan of, but you get Wolf in that kind of big space jockey chair with a viewing screen and all that kind of thing. And on Predator 2, you get the ship with the trophy wall, but they're very enigmatic beings. And the last one we get to, and Trachtenberg wants to convert the entirety of Predator society into Planet of the Apes. And they feel very, very antiquated as beings. These are not the beings that have been depicted up until now. All their technology's gone. Basically, instead of even a basic surface-to-air missile, they've got a whaling harpoon with a chain.
So we're jumping ahead a little bit, but...
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you could have brought, if you're going to go down the primitive weaponry kind of route, bring back the mythology. And the mythology angle was missing, and then you get to the end where it's all the time periods condensed, and we're talking about this kind of condensed production format where it's one single film, and then you're giving this whole thing about, no, they're not even like, the Predators haven't even got their own mini TVs, they're just a big crowd of football hooligans. So it's kind of very mixed messages for me in terms of what we're doing culturally with the predators themselves. But I did think it was a big wasted opportunity not bringing the Viking mythology, the samurai Japanese mythology, even World War II. There were, it wasn't just about gremlins, it was Foo Fighters. They're talking about a literal alien spaceship hunting them. They could have brought in the Foo Fighter stuff, which was a real thing. That's in actual files. They didn't. And it's such a missed opportunity, and stuff like that would have grounded it so well. But again, was that a victim of shortening the production cycle?
I only half agree with you there. While I understand, that Beowulf was a British poem, I still enjoyed at least the Viking portion of it, did try and bring in that aspect of mythology.
But they could have brought actual Viking.
Yeah, I know. But I coming at it from I'm not being that anal about it being a British poem. It still then presents some sort of mythological aspect to that part of the story. So I only half agree with you there.
Yeah, it's not going to matter to most people who watch it. They're just in it to see Predator's wristblade stuff. I just think of what could have been, that was all.
I do disagree with you on disliking the harpoon thing, though, because I very much like I think one of the appealing things of the predators of a species is this contradiction between their tribal nature, which you take as being the more primitive aspect of the predators, with their sophisticated technology. So I actually really liked the harpoon as being this. I'm sat there wondering, is this the part of Dan's interpretation of the predators where they're matching their opponent? So is this the predators going, okay, let's make it slightly kind of archaic, but still unfair because, we don't want them to actually beat us? Because I fucking love that harpoon. I absolutely got a joy out of that. I did in the very first trailer when we saw it in use, and I very much enjoyed it in here.
Wait, are you talking about the aerial battle harpoon or the one in the end sequence?
No, I meant the very end when they're on the platform with the Warlord predator, the thing they aim at.
That harpoon.
Yes. The one where they hold the ship from the...
They're not using basic guided weapons. They literally have Captain Ahab bringing it. There's the white whale. And they shoot it with a chain.
I have an idea of what that could be, in the sense, this is just like fan speculation. That arena, and I don't think we should jump to conclusions for that fourth segment as in representing all of the predator species, and that's all of their culture.
That's the crux that Predator fans always fucking hang on to. And to be fair, it's very valid because at the end of the day, one of the strengths of the Predator franchise as a whole is they are individualistic characters. So why can their culture not also be as diverse as their characters are?
And yet, every single spaceship looked exactly the same at the end. They're all using exactly the same spaceship at the end.
But that also feels, I thought the same because it's obviously the same asset throughout the entire film.
It's a production budget saving
exactly.
thing.
Okay, are we jumping ahead to our complaints about the end?
We're just all over the fucking place this episode.
About that last part, generally, as a whole, we might be like, wait, why would the predators like the arena? And yeah, I've heard the orcish comments, etc. But I see the predators as a reflection of ourselves, in the sense of hunting the hunters. Human society, we have had arenas forever. We still do, for football matches and everything. Everybody loves arena. Before, for centuries, we loved arenas where people fought. It could be one aspect of their entertainment culture. Yeah, we like to hunt them. Maybe some of the more braver ones go out and hunting. But when we find a few stronger pieces of prey, we bring them back for the others to watch, some entertainment. And if we go to the analogy that this is literally just their football arena, like an analogy for our thing, do we have SAMs protecting our football arenas? Heat-seeking missiles?
We do if the leader of our nation is present.
I don't think we do, though, Eric, do we? We don't pump a surface-to-air mirror.
Warlord Predator.
He's a Warlord Predator, but just a leader of something. But we don't know of what and how big, and it can be anything, literally.
I do think that's a perfect point, though, Eric, Greg. How many fucking anti-air or kind of military installations do we have plumped around the roof of a baseball field or a football field?
So my main issues with the film are in that fourth act, I guess you could call it, or climax of the film, where these characters come together. The World War II one gets extended a bit, so we see him back home, and then we see this Predator spacecraft arrive and take him away, and it leaves crop circles. Which
I thought that was fucking hilarious.
I can leave that up to, okay, it's a cheeky moment, whatever. He's not making some wide lore-ranging thing with that. At least I hope not. But no, that was like, are you serious kind of moment? Like, you guys really did that? But again, I can chalk that up to like humor. All right.
I don't think it's humor. I mean, he's saying like, that's the thing, let's reference it. And there are literally alien visitors in this continuity. That's fine. My problem was, it's not even during the war. He's retired from the military. He's back home. How the hell did they know he was involved in it? How the hell did they track
so this
it?
goes to the whole thing of Predators, right? Predators, the third film, where they track down different prey and take them to the game preserve planet. And they somehow know the histories of these people, even like the secret of Dr. Serial Killer. So this only makes me wonder, how are these Predators tracking these people? And later we see they know all their languages, like all their different callers. It has the Viking language. It has the Japanese language. And so it felt a bit off to me. Predators are always hard to handle when you show more of their culture. It's a delicate thing because we've all had nitpicks where they're handled in a way we don't like if they're too space samurai. I know, Aaron, you prefer where they're just sport game hunters and they're kind of cheating bastards. But there's also the Klingon portrayal, which I don't think we like, which was very prominent in the book Forever Midnight, I would say. And this goes a bit... Forever Midnight?
The Klingon aspect's the Yautja.
Well, kind of. I mean...
As in Perry's Yautja.
It's like if you're leaning towards Space Samurai or Klingon Orcish, like you said, Eric, and I think this went a bit too Klingon-esque for me.
Just as I think the orcs are notoriously dumb and stupid brutes. If you get enough of them, as they start getting into, that's different. When you're talking about Space Samurai, that's the honor-obsessed ones. If you're just talking about orcs, it's like a character that just wants to do carnage. So
I would disagree with the orc thing, other than the brute. I guess the brute, in his interpretation, is orcish. I do not think any of the rest of them follow that.
He didn't like ships. He was just going, no.
Well, no, because it was an intelligent moment. If they'd have indicated he was suspecting she was hiding behind one of them, maybe. I mean, of course it's logical. He's there going, I don't fucking know where she is.
But it wasn't hunting.
From a filmmaking point of view, I would have just liked them to have hung a lantern on it and perhaps shown him having a glimpse of her disappearing behind one of them. Again, that's a victim of the
before
condensed
you guys pull
thing.
it away, let me get through my critiques of the end here. So the Predator arena, it feels very, I don't know, Star Wars Episode 2, Geonosian.
John Carter. It all goes back to John Carter.
Or John Carter. Like, the Predators are cheating bastards for sure, but this takes them a bit too much of cheating bastards for me. Because we've seen in the films, they reward and respect people that defeat one of their own. They gave Harrigan the gun. So it's like, well, do they go back and capture Harrigan? Like, just kidding, you're coming with us, so we could throw you in an arena now. So it seemed a bit at odds with them, what we've seen in the films of them respecting and honoring those that defeat one of their own. Whereas in this one, and you can always, again, you can headcanon it and chalk it up, well, this is a different clan, this is how they do things. And the idea of cryo-preserving prey that have fought and defeated the Predators, it's something we've seen in the recent comics, specifically the Marvel comics, the second and third
I don't
runs.
think they actually were victors of previous Predator battles.
Some of them were, like Dutch's brother, I guess, but most of them were not.
It's more of a Predators situation where they would identify interesting prey.
And that was kind of put in the context of the game Preserve Planet, like this is this clan that's a bit more roguish. They don't have these rules that typical Predators do. Whereas this one, it was just they're capturing the victors so they can put them in an arena and have them kill each other. And as they're on their way to the arena, like some of the Predators are bowing to them too, which feels a bit at odds of just like pitting them against each other too.
Yeah, it's because that moment's like, we respect you for your victory. But then again, I don't think pitting them against each other negates that respect for their victory. I agree with you in terms of with the Predator 2 thing. It's like, he just gave him a gift and told him to fuck off. It seems a little unfair that somebody else then just goes and picks him up 2 minutes down the road. It's like, sorry, buddy. So I see how that's at odds, but I don't see how them bowing to these people as they're walking out is at odds with the idea of capturing them. I don't think that's on the same sort of level as if they were to pick up Harrigan. And
it's as if they're bowing to, like, and I guess you could say that maybe this happened, but like bowing to the gladiators as they're forced to fight in the arena or something like that. And maybe that did happen. But as it's portrayed here, it just seems like, okay, congratulations for your win. We're going to just capture you and off you now. We just haven't seen predators act like that towards the victors in the film. And again, you can say, well, Bad Blood Clan, whatever, but this seemed like a bigger, more established clan. So it just makes them too brutish, I think. You know, we have the evil predator king, like whoever wins will fight me. It just seemed a bit, it honestly made me a little worried for Badlands in the portrayal in Badlands. We do see him speak the language there, which I assume is the same language they developed for
You would assume so.
Badlands. And it does sound a bit Geonosian, to keep it on that Star Wars Episode 2 topic. I thought it did anyway. Which, I mean, we have heard the Predator talk before in the film The Predator and in AvP 2010.
And Predator 2. He kind of speaks to himself.
Yeah, he says a few English words in Predator 2 as well. But I didn't have too much of a problem with the language. It sounded fitting, I guess.
Could I just say about the bowing thing? It wouldn't matter, but a few months before, you see Predators just shoving them. Go on, get a move on, kind of thing. But I think it was for the benefit of the audience that were watching them.
Ceremonial part of that
Tradition.
tribal aspect of him. I don't think the idea of him, the Warlord, sorry, Dan refers to this Predator as the Warlord. I don't think the idea of the Warlord being like, whichever one of you survives, I'm going to fight, is necessarily evil in the kind of negative way that you were saying it there, Adam. That does feel predatorish in my thoughts. It might be a little bit of a cheapskate of him going, I can't be arsed to figure out which one of you is the best. Just do it yourselves.
The two times we've seen elders in movies, they're like, yeah, good show. Here's one of my most prized weapons. I'll see you later. That's how we've seen elders in movies.
It is at odds with that interpretation that we've seen. And I can't disagree with you there. You know, and Sarah brings up a good point here is, so are we assuming that if the predators... Oh, wait, no, that's the wrong point. Or have I just misread what Sarah said? I thought she was asking, are we assuming that every single victor of the battles with the predators has been kidnapped? This is where I'm like really leaning on that fan sort of theory of the different cultures, different clans, they do it different ways. I don't think Dan would suggest that everything's going off like this. I would hope he isn't. If he is, then I do disagree with it, because it's like you've said, it's like we've said, it is at odds with the way that a Greyback interacts with Harrigan. So I do hope that is not the interpretation that we're going with going forwards.
Regarding some of those details, even if we ignore that aspect that, unlike when we think about the alien side of fandom, how the creatures should behave because it's a species that have very similar things. Here, even if you ignore that, predators are individuals and one group can do one thing and the other group can do another, even if we don't consider such a cop-out. To me, Predator 2, when Greyback gives that gun, he was laser targeting Harrigan before that, as well as the other clan members were there. And it seemed like in the last moment, to me, it was always like that. It's just a personal interpretation, but it always seemed to me like it was a personal last-minute decision by Greyback, like, you know what? I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to give this to you. Like, that it wasn't a tradition, that in the sense it was an individual thing. Take it. You know what? I feel like you've earned it. We should have killed you, but I'm not going to do it. And AvP, we don't really count that the canon right now. So in a sense, you could say that what Elder in Predator 2 did can be the exception to a theoretical rule, which again, I don't even believe that it would be a rule that every one of them is just kidnapped like that. And regarding the whole fight in the arena, why would they have all three of them fight and then only fight the big bad warlord predator? To me, again, that makes sense. Like in most of the films, predators watch to see the humans kill each other first to see who they're going to
go for. Yeah, exactly. That point.
Yeah, so I think it was just entertainment for them. First, you're going to give us a show for the rest, and then we're going to have a part 2 to the show when you get to fight me. It's just a ceremony, tradition, a kind of, it's sport. This is a game for them. That's how I kind of approached it mentally, and that's why for me it was satisfying.
I think thematically too, it's just like, let some of these protagonists have their win. And again, in the past for me, this was a sticking point for me in the film. Like the Predators did let them have their win. Now we have seen Predators come back and face opponents that had fought Predators before, like even in more recent expanded universe lore, like Dutch and the whole Cleopatra thing. But he kept tracking down Predators after that first one. So there was a bit more motivating factor there, I think. To drop a pretty big spoiler here, we do see Naru at the end from Prey in one of these cryo chambers. And when she showed up, my girlfriend kind of groaned and she was like, oh, just let her have her win and like have a nice time with her people for the rest of her days. Although I have to admit, the thought of Naru in the future in like AvP or some shit sounds very exciting.
Did you notice she's wearing a modern tank top? She's not wearing her...
Really? I thought it was just her same
It looked like a black
outfit.
Tank top. To me, I could be mistaken.
I have to look again.
It could mean she's already been in the arena and she's won and they've put her back into the freezer.
Yeah, I'd have to... I didn't notice that myself. I'd have to do a double take on that. But yeah, so we have to wonder now if Prey 2 happens, if it'll be the story of like how she's abducted or something like that. Or...
I think it wouldn't be. I think they'd follow on from this moment.
You think so? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the idea of Naru in the far future is very intriguing, so I can't discount that at all. But still, part of me was just like, just let her have her win. Come on, I want to see Greyback come in and team up with her against the Fur Trappers or something. Like,
no, thank you. Sarah said earlier in the comments, actually, Sarah said something about she was happy with the Predator's weaponry being used against them that often, if only to save her from a Predator and a human team up. And I completely agree. That is one of the aspects of the film that I do like, is that there is no Predator and human team up in this, and I would very much like to keep it that way.
You know, we're at odds here, Aaron. I do not mind the team ups, and I'm excited for seeing one in Badlands.
I'm curious to how it's going to be handled in Badlands, especially since, you know, Thea is not a human.
I was going to say, technically, yeah, not a human. But what does this say if we're talking about Predator ethics and morals? Firstly, there's a chance this kind of makes Greyback looks like a bit of a bitch, because what is he actually handing Harrigan a gift? Or in this, because it's the same pistol, if this is set after Harrigan, does this mean he actually gave him a tracking device? No, you're ours. He's not actually letting him go. It's a possibility, but also the Warlord Predator. And this also goes back to the Viking Ursa. I think she was way too old. They should have made her younger, because older people don't have the stamina that young people do, and she is going crazy in this.
Eric is 50, just to inform people, so he knows.
Almost 47, yeah. Also carer for an old person. So yeah, in this you have the Warlord saying, you fight each other, then you will fight me. This is the equivalent of the Emperor in Gladiator, where he basically wounds Maximus because he's letting them not only exhaust themselves, but presumably if they had fought one another, they would have wounded themselves. Yeah, now you come to me.
That is kind of on par, though.
Yeah,
it makes them too much of cheating bastards.
But they are cheating bastards.
I know, but it takes it to an extent where it's a bit just, like, it's a bit much.
Aaron was saying, you were saying earlier, they're not evil. By human moral, yeah, it's not evil, but it is very cheaty.
Oh,
this
absolutely.
Is not your weapons, then you fight me.
That is very, why I've never agreed with the Perry. They exaggerated. I always need to clarify this now, because having gone back and reread Prey recently, I don't think it's. I do not think Prey is anywhere near as bad as the interpretations have become of this, you know, space samurai thing. Go back, reread Prey. It's not that bad, I promise.
AvP Prey.
Yes, go reread AvP Prey. That is why I've never ever agreed with that exaggerated interpretation of the space samurai, because they are.
Even Predator 2 established they have some sort of ethical thing.
There is a difference between a code and rules that they follow. It's got to be armed. It's got to be worthy. You know, it's got to have demonstrated. There is a difference between that being a code of engagement and a code of honor.
Rules of engagement can change. Yeah,
I've always taken it like the Pirates of the Caribbean thing. Like, they're more like guidelines than rules.
Yes.
And even AvP Prey says different clans have different rules. Like, some don't even hunt humans, and so it addresses that.
This is why I'm saying Prey is not as bad as this exaggerated interpretation has become within the eyes of the fandom, or within, I think, especially the EU authors at the minute.
And also, you recently had Trachtenberg confirm the Warlord Predator is wearing a bone mask that is another Predator skull. And I think that might also further muddy the waters with the fans who say they've got hard and fast rules compared to us. We think they're more guidelines. They're like, it's nice if you can follow them, but
we've seen Predators kill each other.
You'll get 25.
I think that's pretty established. Like
that is firmly established within the law now. Not just Bad Blood, but, you know, Predators and the Predator. they are going to war or large-scale conflict with well, no, the films haven't shown us large-scale conflicts. The films show us they are still conflicts within the predators.
But I do agree with you, Eric, in that the predators, seeing them in this arena setting and just the looks of them, they feel less predator than they did in the first 3 segments of the film. I would also say another big nitpick of mine with the ending was, again, just how the mechanic/pilot character could just do everything there. Like, he gets eaten and he gets out of the creature and he can pilot his hover bike, and he somehow used the hand of another predator that was eating the computer to disable the bombs on the neck.
That was something else. I was like, I don't think we've seen these predators use their... He certainly hadn't seen a predator use his wrist blade. I don't think we'd seen any of the other predators in that segment use wrist blades. So I'm there like, he's pressing these buttons. For all he knows, he's blowing his mates up and he's blowing himself up. That was
imagine if he got to self-destruct.
Yeah, and then he gets to the spaceship. He's like, can't be that different from my old Wildcat or something. I'm like, oh man. I mean, Caleb told me this. Like, they did Nolan dirty in Predators when he's like, I never thought to commandeer the alien spacecraft. I wouldn't know how to fly it.
In Predators, didn't he say that the thing it was basically going to be on autopilot, so it took account that he wouldn't understand how to fly it?
Well, no, he had to get Classic Predator to chart the course for him.
Yes, and I do wonder if the neck blowing up thing wasn't an Arnold Schwarzenegger reference to Running Man, because I think it was probably a little, hey Arnold, we'll give you a little tribute.
While we talk about references, I just want to put it out there so it's on the record, but the whole 4th act of this whole concept of kidnapping victors of previous battles has existed within the Predator franchise since the 1990s, because this was one of the concepts that was often kicked around for a 3rd Predator film. So, the idea was that they would kidnap Dutch, they would kidnap Harrigan. So we're sat here going, it's fucking unfair. And it's only unfair because the franchise has got much further on down the line now. But this is an idea that has existed within Predator for a long time. And I just want to make sure that's on record.
Yeah, no, it's been around, and even again in recent comics with Dutch's brother. I could kind of compartmentalize that into this was this Bad Blood clan with the Game Preserve planet or something like that.
Not every clan that does something different has to be Bad Bloods.
That's true.
If we continue like this, the Bad Bloods are going to be more the norm than a few literally non-existent
they're just
predators.
average predators.
There was also something that Jen Elder on the Facebook group said, was that he felt it kind of cheapened the Predator's abilities just to see this huge cryo vault. He's like, are these all victors against Predators? Because they've sure been beaten a lot if that's the case.
Yeah.
I kind of wish it had been more like the Predators that are going around doing the capturing for the preserve planets. But then again, that wouldn't have been anywhere near as fun if they're not actually hunting. We don't have that much Predator action going off earlier. So I don't know.
I think in terms of selection, I'd like to raise a point Syl made on the message boards, which was the Viking woman gets an axe, samurai gets a sword, guy gets a sword. The guy who, as far as they're aware, he's maybe flown a plane and he's fixed an engine. They give him a flintlock.
Basically, the Predators are bastards, and they gave them the most stereotypical, low research thing they could find. They are going like, you're around this time, right? You're Viking-ish thing. You deserve an axe.
Here's a nuclear weapon. You know what to do.
Isn't the Japanese era closer to Naru's era than World War II?
Yeah, kind of.
It wasn't the Japanese thing 1600s?
Yeah, and some of them did use actual firearms in the
They should have given him a fucking
period.
plane, is what they should have done.
Yeah. or a spanner, like a wrench or something. Yeah.
I kind of groaned when the pistol showed up.
Yeah, it was like again, just showing up out of nowhere. But there was something to be said for seeing these characters interact with each other. There was some fun there, I think. So that was kind of charming, I guess.
It was certainly satisfying when they all came together.
He's escaped. He's gone back to Earth. So that flintlock has gone from Earth to Predator Prime, and then in the future it'll go back to Earth again.
It depends when this thing's actually set, because the last era we see is World War II.
So it could be pre-Predator 2.
So it could be pre-Predator 2. And that's kind of one of the trippy aspects of the Predators cryogenically storing
that's
people.
What I'm saying. It'll go to Earth or whatever, and then it'll go back to Greyback's clan, and then Greyback's clan is going to go to Earth. give it to Harrigan.
Wait, Eric, do you doubt the Warlord Predator at the end when he says with these guys, let's go hunting the bunch of the ships? You really think they're making it back? No, they're going to prolong this and they're going to probably smite them out. If we do not see them again, they are kaput. But yeah, of course, theoretically in the story, if we would see those characters again, that would be interesting. How many times the pistol has been back and forth.
So we've talked about how the condensed nature of the eras, the shorts, are a bit on the detriment to the Predator side because we see them die so quickly after their introductions. It really, really pissed me off in the final act when that creature eats a Predator. When the Predators trot out this creature as a way to disrupt the apparent alliance or hesitation to battle each other that's going off, the Warlord's like, go on, fucking have Jim the Giant show up and kill everybody. And the Predator pokes him. The creature turns around, fucking eats him. I hated it.
It's the Rancor from Return of the Jedi. He's eating a Gamorrean pig guard.
It was so... I'm like, look, the film's already doing them a disservice with this behavior. Then you just have one of them off like a fucking... like you said, like a guy from Star Wars. I was like, yes, I get the idea. You're trying to show the creatures a threat and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, why don't you just introduce two creatures and have one of them kill the other on the way in for being a dick? Killer of Killers just struggles to really respect the Predators. And that was an aspect of it towards the end. And the more it does that towards the closure of the film, the more it sticks in your memory. So I thought it was a bad call.
It just added to that whole scene feeling a bit too fantastical. I thought a bit too many leaps in logic with the character just understanding how to do everything. It being in this crazy arena, it just didn't quite work for me compared to the first three segments overall. And that final sequence is kind of what brought the movie down a bit for me, I would say.
There are so many things for me to like in that final sequence, but as said, there are a lot of details that don't make sense. The final sequence, the fourth one, is best experienced in a kind of turn your brain off manner there. But to what Aaron said there, weren't you always like the Predators are just the average office person going to...
I make jokes about the dentist going to Earth.
So maybe this is Jerry, the Predator from The Office that was on guard duty, but he's a clumsy one. So, of course, I'm just joking and kidding. It is strange in that scene. It was a bit much. It was very all cool visually. And again, if you turn your brain off, it's very fun. But yeah, that creature was not needed, and to off a guard Predator like that was a bit okay.
It was disrespectful, is what it was.
Exactly. And a little nitpick is why the alien creature would have red blood, since even Earth creatures have very different kind of tints in their blood. But okay,
I noticed that. Yeah.
Disregarding that detail.
They had a skull of another creature that was the size of the arena that dwarfed the other creature.
Yes.
And it just again, the whole thing just felt like, oh, we're in Star Wars now. So it was just a bit much, I think, how the ending was handled. I'm not fully opposed to all the concepts there in terms of cryo-preserving prey, because that offers some interesting opportunities that we've seen in the comics before. It just, how it was portrayed a bit left me scratching my head with a few things.
Now would you like to talk samurai?
So yeah, I really enjoyed that sequence as well, seeing these brothers come back together in a conflict and then having to face a common enemy and realizing that they never should have been pulled apart in the first place. Again, the character drama here, I'd say in the first two works a bit better than the third, but it really worked for me here. And of course, ninja versus samurai, that's cool. I love seeing the environment here, the night Japanese temple and the ninja running on the rooftops. And
that shot of the feral predator, well, the ninja predator, samurai predator, whatever, on that rooftop was phenomenal. That was a gorgeous, gorgeous shot of the predator, and it shows him in a menacing fashion, which is how I like to see them.
It's funny, I saw a tweet. They said, congrats to this predator for being the first one to ever have pants, which I guess is accurate. I think it's for Waiting for the Predator Badlands trailer was the account that said that. But yeah, it was something I had to go back and do a double take on, oh, yeah, he did have just pants on. Okay, interesting.
I like how Dan took away the fishnets, which we're probably not going to be seeing back on the Predators, on his Predators, but we have gotten pants on Predators, so that's kind of interesting and funny.
I really like The second portion, the samurai and the ninja portion, was my favorite of the entire lot. I genuinely really liked this sort of... It was clearly the most feral inspired from appearance, but they took it in a more traditional kind of portrayal of him. All of the predators look like predators, look more like Stan Winston's take on them rather than feral, and I really like that. And I especially like the Japanese one because I thought it was cool to retain the mask because, that was always my favorite part of feral. Retain the mask, but take it on a more traditional look to it. And I really like that. And I really appreciated it. Same for Badlands. We've gone in a more traditional look to it. And I like that Dan's moved away from that insectile interpretation of feral. His portrayal, I think, was perhaps the best out of the entire lot of the predators. We actively see him surveil the character. I hate not knowing which one's which. The Japanese guy.
Yeah, they haven't revealed the predators' names yet, have they?
Dan's called the first one the Brute, or somewhere something official is called the first one the Brute, but no, we haven't seen the names, the other ones. So I'm just going with Samurai and Pilot Predator.
Yeah, it was an interesting design. I mean, all three of these predators have very minimal masks, which, again, may be a thing that Dan likes or Alec likes because they all have they're showing more of the face kind of around the mask for all three of these predators. And this one doesn't have upper mandibles either. It only has the lower mandibles. So you have to wonder, did it lose the upper mandibles, or is this just another subspecies that doesn't have upper mandibles or something?
But in regards to portrayal, though, that's what I want to ask you guys about, because I love that shot of the brothers fighting in the rooftop, and you pan by and you see the guy just hanging off one of the things, just getting a good view of it all. I think he was the most Predator-like in this. And then to go from that surveilling to that sadistic way of fighting, that's the style of fighting I loved. I loved the whip of his arm-mounted thing where he takes out the first few bunch, the spear throw that then chops him in half. I was like, this is my Predator. This is the one I love the most in here. What did you guys think about the portrayal?
Yeah, I agree that this Predator was pretty badass, and I liked his gadgets as well, like the whip protracting claw. Like you said, was pretty awesome. And also the little bombs that he would fire out of his gauntlet kind of reminded me of AvP 2 a bit with some of those weapons.
Well, and the one that Feral has. The bunch that we see Feral use.
Yeah. These ones are just more little like fire and it explodes as opposed to like the proto self-destruct that Feral had. But yeah, this Predator, we see him do a lot of interesting things and like run on rooftops and chase this ninja. Like you said, he kind of just skulks and watches things a bit more than the other predators in the different sequences. And once he starts taking out dudes, just again, this movie is delightfully gory as well. And how he just throws the spear into the swan, and then he collects the spear by like extending another blade that just chops the dude in half. So yeah, this, as far as like the satisfying predator violence, I think this one delivered that the most. I do also really like the pilot predator in the third one because he just hunted in such a different way, and he also had a fun attitude, I thought. But yeah, this predator I thought was great.
I personally would agree with both of you there that probably when we look at it as a whole, the sword portion of this film is the best made. It has another compelling emotional story. It does in a really interesting way portrayal of the characters with literally almost no dialogue. It was done very, very succinctly in that sense. But in terms of the Predator, yes, this one feels the most close to previous incarnations that we've gotten used to, not only for its behavior, but also seeing it a more armored Predator, which we generally haven't with Dan's other versions. Plus, this one has wrist blades. This one even had on one shoulder like two plasma casters, which was interesting, or some kind of ranged caster thing that we didn't use, but that was fun.
There was no plasma casters in this at all, was there? In use, anyway.
Yeah, not in use, but he had something that looked like plasma casters, a pair of them on one of the shoulders. It was very interesting, never used, but there was something that really looked like it. I'll send you a picture of that later. But yeah, I loved the variation of all of the gear. That's what I love seeing with the Predators, using a bunch of gear. That's one of the things that I liked in Requiem, a Predator that had so many different kinds of gear available there. So those are all aspects that I really liked. And also, again, the end, how they dealt with them was pretty nice. The final shot was a bit like, yeah, the fight was going well until it kind of ended a bit confusingly too fast.
I think it ended poorly. The whole aspect of them, like when they started teaming up, when the brothers realized, yeah, we've got to work together, it was fantastic. It was brilliant. I fucking loved it. And I like that takes over into the finale. It was super satisfying in the finale, you know, when he looks at the Ursa and they realize how they're going to play it with the shield and sword aspect of the fight. That was gorgeous. I don't understand in the final bit of the Japanese era why that Predator just stays there. He hits the tree, he cloaks, and then he just stays there.
Agreed. That was strange. I suspect that when that explosion happened, because that we understand what happened, the ninja brother there got the explosive thing to go on the whip and retract it into the arm. Kablooey. But the funny thing was, the Predator exploded into the tree, and I guess he got knocked out? He was unconscious, but turned invisible. So it activated his invisibility, but knocked him out as well. And so the brothers were just like, let's do the final blow. First, I thought, the Predator activated invisibility on its own and is now looking for the final kill. They need to find him, that he's stalking them. That's what I first thought. I'm like, that'll be an interesting final scene. They have to figure it out, and he's trying to get a sneak attack on them. But no, he was just there, knocked out, seemingly. So they just do the final attack on him. That was a bit confusing, the final blow. The build up, the fight before that was pretty nice. But yeah, that final way they kill him was strange. But I just want to highlight that two of the best scenes in that short for me were, the first one was seeing the Predator go through the red smoke bomb, all invisible, like seeing
Fantastic
that silhouette.
Visual.
That was beautiful. But also a scene, I think, just before that a bit, when the ninja brother was hiding beneath one of the roofs and the Predator was there sneaking about, and then you weren't sure, was he near? I liked the horror elements of that, and then he stabbed the foot and the whole action scene commenced there. So I really liked how tense that moment was. But agreed then, probably what the rest of you here will say, we needed probably more of those moments. If that was longer, more building of the tension, that would have worked a lot better. And I really enjoyed that short. And I will say that I suspect another one of the reasons why this Predator felt the closest to the previous ones, behavior-wise, is because he uses the cloak an actual practical amount of time. That is, even though I really like what Dan seems to be doing, and from what we've seen in the trailers for Badlands, what we might get, I do feel that criticism that some of us put here, that it is valid. The Predators don't use enough of their cloak, not enough of the sneaky stealth kills, and not enough of using a plasma caster or other ranged weapons. So those are elements that I would like to see more in his Predators, and was half hinted. Again, I'm even happy just seeing the wrist blades on a Predator again with the Ninja one. So it was the best out of all of them performance-wise, but I hope we can see other developed kind of gear elements and combinations of new things, new weapons, plus the old base ones like range ones and the blades, etc.
The choreography of the fights was also the best in this one, I think. The brothers fighting, I thought that was choreographed very well. When the brother shows up and starts throwing the smoke bomb in and takes out all its guards, that was brilliant. And this Predator was still using ranged weapons in a primitive and close quarters kind of way, which was very satisfying. You know, the spear, the whip chain thing, you know, because he could use it at a distance and then bring him in to striking distance. That was a really nice sort of contrast of the Predator technology and the Predator methodology of fighting. Any other thoughts on the Predator on this segment from either you?
So I feel like Badlands, with what you mentioned of us not seeing the cloak, Greg, we'll probably see that in Badlands, but I can also chalk that up to, like, if a Predator's hunting in a society where he wants to remain undetected, maybe he'd be using the cloak more as opposed to on just a planet of monsters. Like, maybe he doesn't know Weyland-Yutani's there, and that's when we see him use the cloak more, or he's doesn't have his cloak because he's an exile or something like that. But Yeah, I feel that this Predator, the fight sequences were great. Overall, yeah, I'd say this was probably the strongest for me too. Even with my issues of the next one, though, I did really like the World War II sequence overall.
Eric, any thoughts? Specifically on the Predator interpretation in this.
What, all three of them, or just
No, in the
samurai?
Predator in the Japanese one.
Yeah, it was the most predatorish Predator out of all the three, but I would have still preferred more in the way of the actual hunting and stalking. I think that was a missed opportunity because you had the whole, like, the guy is a ninja, and I would have loved this cat and mouse game. And we had a bit of that on the rooftops, but we didn't have nearly enough. It was too eager to get to sort of mass carnage. I know a lot of fans are really into that, but I prefer the cat and mouse stuff of Predator. And I very much I see what they were doing with the end. They were trying to do a red herring thing where, the brothers are going to fight one another again. But because we as the audience aren't very invested with them as characters, it didn't feel like very much of an emotional moment like they were aiming for. So there should have been at that moment, it might have gone back to the childhood where they were giving a lesson about, listen for a leaf falling or whatever it was they were taught as kids. And then they would use that lesson to be, there's the Predator. You do that thing when we were kids, you do that thing. And then there would have been a everything comes together moment, an A-team moment, and there wasn't. And it was a shame. But I think the reason that works so well with the melee stuff, or that was the most melee intensive thing in terms of skill. Casper in the comments has asked of which one of the characters would have done well in the gladiator thing. For me, it would have been the samurai guy because he's the most skilled. The Viking woman was just kind of going with brute strength, and the World War II guy had quips. This took the most planning, I think, to plan out the fight choreography. But yes, this was the most predatorish of them. It is a shame they didn't use any energy guns. They didn't even use the spear gun, which I thought would have been a thing because they had something like that in feudal Japan. Humans, I mean, not predators. The World War II one I had the most problems with there.
As much as the Japanese one is my favourite part of it, as much as this samurai Predator is my favourite interpretation in the film, probably one of my favourite interpretations of the Predator, actually, thinking about it. I just really liked how he behaved. I had a real issue with the brothers in this because...
Like what his issue was.
I like a film with no dialogue. I can get behind something that nobody speaks in or there's very minimal speaking in. I could quite happily have an animated Alien versus Predator, an animated Predator where they're hunting some other alien and there's fuck all dialogue and we are just inferring things. I like that. And when this started off and when I realized that there was very little dialogue in it, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I could not infer what the fuck was going off between any of these brothers. I just did not understand what any of this drama was, and then it got to him blading him on the cheek. And I was like, okay, why? Is this because you're now different with the twins?
Their father set them a task. One of them sort of counted coup against the other. The other one was exiled for some reason.
No, that's the thing. He didn't seem to be exiled. He ran out.
Yeah.
He ran out.
It was his own choice, yeah. But then the whole story was he wanted to pay him back for, I'll give you a blay on the and I'm thinking, but you killed 25 guys to get there. That's not honorable.
And it didn't look like he wasn't pulling any punches, though. He was trying to fucking stab the guy.
Yes. It was very contradictory.
That's why I was like, why was this the end of it? I just did not understand the character motivations going off there. But that said, even though I didn't, I still liked it when they came together at the end because I enjoyed that.
I feel like it was trying to show their father was the real enemy because you see him after he scratches his brother with the sword, the railing breaks and his brother falls, and you can tell he wasn't expecting that. He didn't want to kill his brother. He wanted to show his brother what was up, essentially. And then he sees this mural with the father, and then this predator comes out of the mural at him. So to me, we don't know if he was exiled. Maybe it was just expected that he would leave. Maybe the father was just I only care to have one son or whatever, and he was just an abusive father. And so whichever son is the strongest is the one I want. It doesn't really go into that. And again, there's very little dialogue here, but I don't know if it needs it. I mean, the story is like, and it comes back to this at the end, right? Where the surviving brother, the ninja, is like, no, I'm done fighting when we don't need to fight, when we're stronger together. And that was kind of the whole message of this one. I thought, like, someone trying to pit us against each other when, why should we do this? Like, we're brothers, essentially. So that was, I think, kind of a nice, I guess, message, I would say. But I also understand that it doesn't really explain a lot as to why he left. We're just kind of taken to interpret that, I guess.
I would also agree with Aaron that, yeah, I was also confused a bit about the exact motivations, what exactly is happening between them. I was also confused. Because, yes, everything is a bit rushed, so you don't have time to explore it, even in a dialogue-less type of 20-minute content there. But at the same time, I was already primed by the atmosphere. I was going off of vibes there. I just got that, yeah, there is some kind of feud there. I interpreted that, yeah, it was probably the father. They were training together. They thought everything was going to be okay as kids. And then Daddy Samurai was, oh yeah, you have to fight to the death or something to inherit my position or something like that. And the kind one who later became the ninja brother was just like, yeah, no, I don't want to fight you to the death. And the other one was, nope, I want the approval. So he gave him the cut. He beat him. The brother was down and could have been killed. So yeah, that was like, okay. And then the defeated brother was then embarrassed or something, so ran away and exiled himself. The most confusing aspect was, why did Ninja Brother decide to return and attack when the father samurai died? What was the exact motivation there? If it was just to get there and give him the scar and everything, yeah, that's a bit strange there. I kind of get it that, yeah, we're even now or something, or to prove himself, oh, now I'm as good as you, now I can take you down or something. I don't know exactly what, but the whole vibe of those scenes was cool enough. The animation was brilliant, as how the samurai brother was taking parts of the armor along the fight and dressing himself up. The animation was so brilliant. It was really stunning to watch. Yeah, the whole exact motivations were a bit strange. Maybe, yeah, what Adam said, the ninja brother snapped out of it when he saw that picture of the father and then the predator getting out of that, which was artistically beautiful. I forgot that's also a phenomenal scene there. Quite horrifying.
Absolutely.
I don't think you even needed those. I think it would have worked fine if it was a ninja stalking his target, a predator, they're actually stalking the same target, and then there's a whole cat and mouse game, and then it could have ended on almost a humorous note. They needn't have even actually killed one another. Something that you didn't need this human drama mixed in. Or they might have tried to flesh it out, but they had to cut it down or something. Yeah, it made it a lot more confusing than it needed to be.
Sarah brought up a point that I had thought, Sarah said, oh, I thought they were twins. She goes on to say, so there wasn't an older son to take over from the father, so he put them in a position to fight each other for it. I thought they were twins as well. And one of the things I was kind of thinking was it the guy that got the scar was like, I want to make us look alike again? That was something that I'd kind of thought about. You've scarred us, you've put this gap between us. But then I was like, oh, but that's so superficial sounding. So I wasn't too sure.
The fact we're having to debate this is a sign that the writing wasn't the strongest for that aspect.
But also in that regards, the fact that we might not be clear can also be a good thing. I just don't think in this particular instance this is something that should have been this confusing.
I mean, it was meant to be subtle, given just there's no dialogue except the one line that is repeated back later and with a little bit added to it. But yeah, there's definitely a bit of confusion there. I won't deny that. I thought, for me, emotionally, it worked, even with what we didn't know about the details there. But yeah, it
still pays off at the end.
Yeah, it does leave one wondering, though, exactly what the entirety of the conflict was there. Because, yeah, he just kills a bunch of dudes that were apparently under his brother's command. So it does make you wonder.
Do you want to talk World War II then?
Yeah. Although just before we do, something else that's missing from all of these is that classic signature move of the Predator emulating words at ominous moments that it hears. And I don't remember it ever doing that in any of these.
No, there's no mimicry in this. There's no trophy taking in this or spine ripping in this either.
Especially not in the World War II one.
Which was interesting because I actually thought, because the way the harpoon seems to fly off and away, I was like, is this how he's claiming trophies? Is it actually going back to the ship?
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't going back to the ship.
It just springs into the air at random. He's never going to see those bodies again.
I, for a second, thought, is he taking from those planes, like the spine of the plane, is he taking the engines as a trophy or something and bringing it back to the ship? Which, that wasn't the case. But that was what I first thought. Like, is this an original take on the trophies? What? But yeah, besides the first Grendel Predator thing in the shield, where he holds the head with a bit of the spine of that one dude that was decapitated, besides that, yeah, there weren't any other trophy takings.
So was this anybody's favorite?
I think initially it was mine. And then upon second viewing, maybe I switched to the Japan era one. I still really liked this one because World War II is a setting we've wanted for Predator for a long time. And the fact that it's aerial battles and dogfighting with a Predator spacecraft is just so cool and new. Again, it's a new way we see the Predator hunt here. And I love just the attitude this Predator pilot has, like when he puts the ship in reverse immediately and cooks that guy. Like there's some just really awesome moments here.
That was one of the moments where I actually had a physical reaction. I was like, fucking hell, that's awesome. That was brutal. That's how I like to see my Predators. That was being a bastard and I liked it.
See, that was brilliant to see. I loved the kind of micro expressions on that Predator. You get the close-ups of his face, how he's reacting to what the planes are doing around him. He basically almost looks insulted when they try to outmaneuver and shoot at him. Like, are you serious? Do you believe that this will work?
Which is nice because it speaks to the arrogance of the Predators, which is always a part of their defeat, is their overconfidence and arrogance.
True. To me, this short is my least favorite out of all four, but still, overall, I liked it. Overall, I did like it. Torres was charming. He was nice, interesting there. He was a bit too Marvel quippy, and with some of the ridiculous things he did in the fourth segment is a bit much. And in the third, with the jumping on the wing of the plane, Torres going all Tom Cruise style, it was a bit like, okay. And the way that he evades the Predator with how quickly the thermals just disappear when he goes to that high altitude, that's a bit quick. It was all a bit exaggerated to the extreme compared to the previous.
It's the most comic, probably the most comic book.
Yes.
I feel like the entire thing is a Dark Horse comic book, and I don't say that in a bad way. I say that in terms of sort of concepts and being experimental, but this one felt a bit too much like a comic book in terms of, those quips and the suspension of disbelief required for things like the climbing on the wing.
The moment you said about Dark Horse comics at the start of this, my mind immediately went to this one, because I think this would have actually worked way better in comic format.
I am kind of curious as to if there are any stories of World War II pilots doing that. I would be quite interested to know.
No, there are not. Dead ones, maybe, but I suffer from the thing about I know about air combat, and a whole lot of this was just fueled by military grade bullshit. I could think of ways they could have done it in a realistic fashion. Like as soon as he figures out heat thing, I thought, he's going to go into the clouds, and it wouldn't have made the signature disappear, but there would have been interference from the heavy water vapor, especially if like it's a storm or something, which could have added.
Oh yeah, that would have been a very good way to add atmosphere to that. Yeah.
You just drive it up. An engine doesn't go freezing cold just because you turn it off. And you wouldn't have had the air friction go away.
In that bit, though, you've also got to be like, that's where you've got to give some concession because of things like the exaggerated properties of the mud.
Yeah, they could have used a cloud. It was the simplest thing. And they could have, instead of him going out on the wing, which made no sense, you could have had this like an Independence Day style thing where he's just trying to get the control work, and then at the last moment it does. Nobody is going to go out on the wing. I mean, if nothing else, that is going to make the plane start to go over. And it's not going to go over a little bit because the weight goes on the wing. It's going to start go over and over and over, and it's going to tip into the ground. So a bunch of this made no sense. But did it work as a cartoon? Kind of, yeah. But it's not anything I haven't seen in Star Wars. It's just generic Star Warsy cartoon stuff. So for me, it was there.
I wouldn't agree there. I don't, because the Star Wars. I don't want to say Star Wars.
If this was a Star Wars cartoon, that sequence would have worked fine.
The only thing I really had a problem with was his on the wing because, yeah, the wind resistance and just how like the plane tilts and he just jams the flat back up.
I liked that. I liked that as a way to try and write it. I was like, that's actually pretty smart.
Yeah, but it was overall, I thought the dogfighting was really cool. And after the rest of his squadron gets taken out and he flies like through the city.
Was he supposed to be Casablanca?
I'm not sure. It wouldn't surprise me because it did.
In Africa, it was either that or it was meant to be France itself, and there were no US.
It can't have been France. Yeah,
I don't think there were any involved in Africa, but I could be wrong about that. But they should have been more concerned about Germans.
No, so there was apparently some French traitors in Africa fighting for the Germans. Yeah. And to be fair, I had no idea until this, and I was looking it up because I was like, it sounds like they're speaking French. No, surely not. Maybe it's Italian.
A lot of people registered surprise, I think largely because it was, US military World War II. They should have set it in the Pacific. But what occurred to me was that would have been even better because then it would have added some tension when he met the Japanese character. Because from his perspective, he would have been at war where he doesn't know the war's ended.
He does question how long he's been asleep, though, when he wakes up.
But he's too buddy-buddy with the guy. But tension is good. Stories come from conflict. And I would have liked to see more tension. If you set it in the Pacific, in fact, you could have even had a Japanese pilot there and maybe his dead body or something. But it would have been good. But I don't know why they chose to set this in the location they did.
That's another part where I feel like it's a victim of the condensed nature of this film. Because, yes, it would have been much cooler if there was drama and conflict and tension between the Japanese and the world warfare, but then they have to deal with it, and then they have to get over it before they can crack on with everything else. So it's just one of those things where it didn't have the time to breathe like it should have done. Although I still think this was really cool from a experimental point of view. Like I said during all the trailers, I was like, this was never on my bingo card of seeing a Predator dogfighter. And I really liked it. I actually really, really enjoyed it. It's swinging, it's experimenting, it's doing different things. And I think it works because, again, I've always said, the Predators are cheaters. So this concept of them being in a more advanced craft, dogfighting, is still in line with the Predators for me. And I do think the harpoon thing was a purposefully neutered type of weaponry to keep up, while not being perhaps on par with the technological level of Earth at that time, but it is more fairer, challenging, I guess, because we do see them dodge the harpoon in some circumstances. So, it's not an auto win every time. I did really like that. And I liked the way they handled it in terms of them shooting down the engine. I wasn't sure how they were going to deal with the win. And I liked his idea of trying to get the crossfire between all the ships. I thought that was cool. I liked seeing that big hole in the hull. But I absolutely could not fathom the thought process that was going on in his head to come up with that strategy. Because I was like, okay, he's trying to rely on his dad flooding the engine as a solution. I was like, how is this going to play into it? And then the whole thing happened with looping the harpoon round. And I was like, I have no idea how that was any relevant or how he planned on that kind of thing happening. I don't understand this end. This was really not to my liking. So, love the concept, love a lot of the execution, don't think it came together.
So the sequence opens, or the story opens, with him a bit younger and his father. And
it's only a year.
Right, so a year prior. So he's driving his car recklessly, floods the engine, and his father's helping him fix the engine and hands him his draft notice and says, I'm tired of bailing, or I'm done with bailing you out. You have to do it on your own.
Do you think that was
now.
the line, bailing out?
Yeah, that's what he said.
No, I mean, do you think that was the motivation? Because for like the parachute, because that doesn't
I didn't
connect
think
to
of
me.
that. I didn't make that connection. Yeah,
I think it was just an Obi-Wan Kenobi, I've got inspiration from looking at you kind of thing. I don't think it was a specific. He'd remembered, flooding the engine, but I think it was just, this idea, and he's putting it down to thank you, Dad, kind of thing. Like Maverick with Groove.
I guess the moral for this one was a bit less clear for me. It was like, understand what you're doing, I guess, and don't overly rely on others to do things for you. You just have to go out and do it or something like that. Whereas I felt it was more clear with the second one, like, don't be forced into like a fight that you're not about or something like that. And the first one is like, don't let your inner demons kind of take you. Whereas this one, it's like, understand your engine if you're going to fly your aircraft, which I guess, it makes sense.
It's certainly muddled because, yes, you should learn to do things for yourself. That was a bit of a lesson that my dad taught me myself, although I generally think it's because he didn't know. When I wanted to build a website, I was asking my dad, can you help me? Can you help me, Dad? Because he was always a computer techie guy and he always built them and he would all that sort of stuff. So I was like, can you help me? Can you help me teach me how to do this? And he's like, fucking learn to do it. Well, no, he didn't say fucking learn to do it yourself. He was like, learn to do it yourself. Go and research it. Go and look it up. And I genuinely think he just didn't know how to do it. But no, that was a lesson that I learned from him early on. But on the flip side of that, you also need to know when to ask for help and you shouldn't take all these things on board yourself. I'm not going to attempt to fix my car. I'm a fucking moron and I would damage it, So I don't get the moral here either.
I think maybe the whole we can't fight it, we've got to fly together, and then he saw the squadron kind of split up, and then maybe that comes back into it where they got to team together, maybe. But I think it was just, let's fly my engine into a spaceship. I don't think there was a deeper message there.
But his mentor kind of switches from his father to the commanding officer, which is played by Michael Biehn. So it's really cool to see him in a Predator film.
Trachtenberg, wasn't it?
I can't remember his character's name.
I really, really enjoyed hearing Michael Biehn back in this. Although I was getting some very Michael Rooker vibes off his delivery, though, I'll be honest. But I really liked it. It was good to hear him back. I liked his character. I enjoyed the mentor kind of figure to it. Yeah. It was enjoyable, and he was a likable guy, and it was a nice performance.
Yeah, I think he comes to believe in Taurus when they're up in the sky, and eventually he sacrifices himself for him, which is an interesting juxtaposition between this like touching moment where he's like, I'm going to buy you some time, and then he just gets killed in a very gory fashion. It's like, oh shit. So it's a very kind of sudden jolt moment there, I thought. But yeah, overall, it was great to see Michael Biehn back here, and He's done a number of roles in this franchise now between Alien 3 and Colonial Marines, but he had never done Predator before, so it's cool to see him in here.
It was really nice seeing him. I enjoyed the chemistry between him and Torres. Again, it was all short, but it was short and sweet. What he did, it was nice that he had some kind of meaningful impact in the story, in that sense that he was the character there to sacrifice himself so that our main character can get an upper hand on him. So I like what they did with the character to give Michael Biehn a significant kind of role there. So that was pretty nice to see, especially after all these years. But generally, I am very happy with how vicious this Predator was, with the unique kind of weapons. I mean, generally from all of these shorter stories, that these new weapons are introduced. Some are better and more interesting than others, but these kind of heat-seeking harpoons, strange, but again, extremely cool. I am starting to believe that the Predators could very well pick like their own favorite weapons. Ooh, I like the type of carnage this one does. That's what I'm taking to my next hunt, basically. So I just think it kind of suits.
I don't think he was on a hunt. I think because he wasn't collecting trophies, he was in a transport ship and it was meant to collect cargo. But yeah, fuck it, I'm going to Earth, and he's just going to have fun. And he Leroy Jenkins
maybe
into whatever planes he could find at the time.
I did find it strange seeing at the very end where Torres was leading him through the naval battle. Like, yeah, I get Predator's arrogant and everything, that it works perfectly, but damn, he is not focused on being stealthy. Oh, naval troop of ships that just have seen him barely invisible. That's going to be something that so many people are going to be talking about. That he really screwed up there.
He was cloaked until the aircraft smashed into a ship, so that could have disabled his cloak.
True, it's not completely like out of character there, but it was just kind of strange seeing a predator in such a huge ship being involved in actual dogfights. So it takes a while to get used to it. But again, what Aaron said, I completely agree with. I am happy that they're taking swings, that they're trying different types of approaches, putting the predator in a different kind of setting to see what if he's not in a direct hunt with this person, maybe using his gear, maybe with a ship. I'm really happy that we've gotten to see something like this. And again, it's something so new and bold that even though it's my least favorite of the bunch, I have mad respect for trying something like this. And then again, I'm very glad that amongst a bunch of the comments here and there, I see a few people that say, oh, this third one is their favorite. It has something new for them. So I just like that we have different these episodic little shorts there that some people can find more enjoyment than the rest of the ones. So it's different enough that people can find what's for them most of the time. What do you all think about his aesthetic design, his kind of mask and shaved head thing? What did you all kind of think about his aesthetics compared to the other predators?
I liked him. I thought he looked cool, how he had kind of an eye patch and then just a very slim mouthpiece that allowed for expressions with his mandibles and with his other eye. So yeah, and his chair has like these tubes hanging onto it from the ship that kind of sway around, which kind of look cool. So it just seemed like he was in his cockpit ready to go all the time and just really enjoying his aerial hunts. So no, I thought he was a really cool predator. We never get to see him full body. I was kind of thinking like maybe he would get out of the ship at some point and fight on foot, but nope. He gets defeated in the ship. He's just in the ship the whole time. But it kind of made for a unique hunt, I thought, in that sense.
That seems more fitting for what's going off in that era. So I didn't have a problem with that bit myself. I do like his look. I did like the Kang appearance. I'm not sure, was his vision through the eyepiece or was it through the ship? I don't know if it really sort of justifies that, but I liked that.
It's been both. It's like an Apache gunners thing, like on monocle.
Or it's like his targeting computer in Star Wars.
Yeah. It didn't work for me. Like you said, it's too much Kang. It was way too Klingon for me. But I do remember a lot of fans saying, oh, it hasn't got dreadlocks. There's a story here. And no, it just sits in a chair and shoots things.
Well, we've seen Predators cut off their dreadlocks before in like comics and stuff. So to me, it's just a visual style. They can rip them out. They can cut them off. Like it's just part of his personality, I guess. You know, we have bald people. So
depending on Badlands, maybe most of the Predators are balding. So we'll see.
It depends on the actual purpose of the dreadlocks. That's the thing. Like if they are sensory organs, then...
Well, I think they can be sensory organs that can still be trimmed, you know. And again, we've seen that in many of the comics. They just get snipped. And we've seen...
But those predators also normally die when they get the dreadlocks ripped off. I don't think we've seen any.
We've seen a few different predators in the expanded universe that have like hard cuts on their dreads, like between Hunting Grounds and Batman versus Predator 3, where we have the Sun Predator. He has like all of his dreads are just cut off in kind of an Egyptian looking hairstyle. So we've seen it a few times. I don't think it would kill them for them to snip their dreads a bit.
In the cinematic continuity, though, the films, didn't the Predator, wasn't there a fleshy dreadlock that had been a tendril thing that someone had a hold of, or got a hazy memory of that? Yeah.
Yep, when they ripped it off, it's full of blood.
I mean, yeah, but if you like wax hair on a human body, yeah, it bleeds too. It doesn't mean like people won't snip their hair either. So
yeah, but that would be from the paw. I mean, if it's like meat, it would be different, but that's why they've got so many of them. They've got a backup.
We'll have to have a Predator Dreadlock podcast, I guess.
When this releases, the episode won't be out, but we recorded an interview with the Bad Blood, the creative team behind Predator Bad Blood, and I had been planning on asking what they thought the Dreadlock's purposes was, since some get pulled off in that, but we didn't actually get around to it. That'll have to be a question for Dan.
I think it's like cat whiskers, right? Like that's a sensory part of the cat. They use that to navigate. It's still just a really big hair follicle. You don't want to yank it out of the cat because that would be painful. And likewise with the predator, they probably wouldn't enjoy it if you yanked their dreadlocks out of their head.
Yeah, anyone watching this, please do not yank whiskers out of cats. But for a dog or cat, that's because they are erect, so they will, feel things physically. Predators, they just floppy. They're not going to be. It might depend if they are in the water or something. That would be different.
I imagine they're filled with either blood or their other type of liquid, and it's for balancing purposes, etc., like external inner ears. But yeah, so you all have opinions about that predator. One question: what did you think about the ship designs of the main baddie in the Bullet and the later cargo type of ship?
It looked like your typical kind of predator ship we've seen in the last few movies. The articulating twin engine design, and all of the ships were of the same design in this film. And we've kind of had something similar to that since Predators in 2010. Like Predators, the Predator, Prey for what we see of the ship, and now this had that same scout ship with the twin moving engines. And at this point, I'm like, can we try some other Predator ship designs? Because there were so many interesting Predator ship designs in the comics and in the video games before that it feels like the ships are getting a bit too similar from the last on-screen projects we've seen of them. I still think it was cool how the ship moved in this. Like, I like that look for a Predator ship. We've just seen a lot of it as of late.
Well, yes, there is a lot of similarities there between all the other ones. I thought this one looked a lot more insectile. I think it took a lot more influences from what we'd seen of the Lost City ship, or at least NECA's interpretation of the Lost Tribes ship. So I quite liked that. I also very much liked how the Warlord ship at the end was adorned with, again, more bones and skulls and ceremonial kind of looking things there. That was a nice way to make that look different. I was a little disappointed that, yes, it was the same ship design used throughout the entire film. It's the one we see dropping off the Brute at the start. It's the same that we see in the World War II era, then it's the same that the Warlord shows up, even if it is adorned. So that was kind of disappointing. I liked the simplistic nature of the collector ship at the end of the World War II era, the one that comes to get Torres. It was simple. It didn't need to be fancy. It's just a big cargo container. I do wish we'd have seen how he was kidnapped, how they handled getting him, because the tri-laser targets just fly, highlight him. I'm like, so what they're going to do? Are they going to tractor beam him? Are they going to shoot a big net at him? How's this going to work? So I would have liked to have seen how that played out, but the ship design, was functional.
That's right. We did have the transport ship that he gets abducted in the end, which made me think of, again, the curiosity of them abducting these people to take them to the game preserved planet and the ship they had them on. So it was kind of cool to see that for a moment. I wasn't crazy about that ship design, though. It just looked like a big boxy. Again, it looked like something we would see in Star Wars, kind of. But it was cool to see a different ship design in that moment that we get that other one at the end.
I am a little tired of seeing an intergalactic species which is basically using chemical jet thrusters. Feels very primitive. So a different kind of propulsion system. They don't have to be on all the ships, but every now and again I'd like to see something different as a propulsion system. It feels way too kind of 1960s. What does an alien ship look like? But aside from that, the design of it, it's a Predator ship. But I mean, I do miss the old original Predator 1 ship. I'd like to see that again.
Yeah, I really miss that shuttle. I actually really liked it. Thing is, I don't know how well it actually vibes with the aesthetic that Predator's now gone on, or how well it really vibed with the original Jungle Hunter aesthetic, but I do have a soft spot for that shuttle.
That Anderson didn't like it, but he still put it inside in little shuttle. Were they smaller? Because they looked way smaller than in.
It was like two on each side of the Predator mothership.
Lifeboats.
Yeah. Sarah says in the comments, talking about the World War II era. Oh, sorry, Craig, did you have some points on the ship that you wanted to discuss there?
I just wanted to say regarding the ships that I personally quite like them, and I am more in the boat with you, Aaron, where you say, I feel like, insectile, I would maybe describe it previously, I think we've even called it a more crustacean, but basically that segmented type of ship. I'm happy that it looks more like that Predator 2 style of ship, especially on the exterior. than what we've gotten with the Predator's design. So that was my least favorite type of ship design there. So I was happy to see that darker, segmented, sharp, armored kind of crustacean vibe. So I was pretty happy with the designs there. Even the interiors, again, as other members on our forums have said, they would have liked to see a bit more of the Predator 2 style interiors. That would have been nice. I agree there. But even though we didn't see that, we have gotten more of the kind of AvP Requiem interior styles, which is still nice and I think fits perfectly well. And again, to me, is a lot better than the interiors of the ships in the Predator, which were just completely bland and I hated them. So I was overall happier that the designs are going back to something better, at least. And the cargo ship was a different kind of design. I liked that. And I at least saw it still looked a bit segmented and kind of metallic scaly. And I was happy that that kind of style was being used in a different kind of shape there. But yes, I understand and agree that the general silhouette of the two-engine style ships is getting a bit over prominent. So it might be time for some more interesting, unique shapes and designs for the ships, which would make sense if we're already getting Predators, single Predators that are very unique and distinct from one another. Since Dan is heading this, we're getting very unique and different Predators with unique and different gear. Okay, let's maybe do the same thing with the ship designs and continue that. So I would be more than on board to see a bit more differentiation in the silhouette, something new there.
So just talking on the World War II era, Sarah asks, what confused me is that Torres didn't fix the plane engine in the first place, but then everything he does later works. Is he good at this or not? Again, that's one of those victims of the condensed screen time. We don't get to see him work on it. We assume he does, but we don't get to see it. So funny though, Sarah.
The force was with him.
Casper says talking about on my comment earlier about them capturing Torres, they lure them in with a free candy sign. That's how they or free plane sign, I assume, for Torres rather than that.
I imagine that how do they find all of these people and keep track of them? They must have some fantastic Predator version of CIA just collecting all of the data.
If we have decent surveillance technology, I'm sure the Predators have significantly better surveillance technology. And that was the thing that I liked in the EU, was this idea of the collectors and the ecologists and stuff like that who were going around looking at what a planet had to offer, and the tracker predator in Peter Briggs' story, who was hunting the aberration, as I think they called her in this, a very specific terrorist. So I would like to see something like that, a story about them trying to collect somebody, maybe with a bit more action. But I kept wanting the characters in this to die. Not for it, I don't like them, but for it, let's show the Predators some success, please.
Well, when we had that happen in the Gladiator arena, one of them got swallowed. I thought, oh, the stakes are being raised. It's the end
I
of
thought
the
he
film.
was dead.
Perfect. And then it's, I'm just going to stab this thing. And it's not even joking. But that would have been nice. Like, one of them gets away and none of the others all.
That could have been so much more horrific. One of the things I remember, I absolutely fucking love this film, Nope. And one of the most horrific bits of it is the imagery of the people inside Jean Jacket being suffocated and being eaten. And that kind of leans towards that comic element of the Gladiator bit. But yeah, I get your point.
I was also kind of expecting in that final fourth part that we will actually see these characters die and be like, oh, no, I hope that doesn't happen. But at the same time, then all three of them making it out at the end was a bit like, again, it felt nice, but at the same time, it was a bit of a wasted opportunity. I mean, I'm generally not too much in the camp of that the protagonist has to die. It would be interesting to see that as a different type of story for once. It would. But at the same time, I also understand when other people say that, well, technically in all Predator stories, they do kill a bunch of people. It's just that one person that turns out to be our protagonist takes care of the Predator. So the Predator has a multitude kill streak, and then this one special person from each film just
97% success rate of killing people. That's a good thing.
I mean, I did like how Torres survived. I think it would have felt a bit off if he just had died that quickly by being eaten by this monster. So it was cool to see him come back. And then when Ursa rides down the chain to release the ship, she's like, oh, my boys got away. What's interesting, though, is they didn't kill her. They put her back in cryo. So
That poor woman.
again, like I expected with the portrayal of the Predators at the end there, how brutish they are, they would have just offed her, but they didn't. So there was some interesting like back and forth. Do they respect these humans or do they not respect these humans? Kind of reaction for me.
They value the entertainment that they offer.
And in one
Exactly.
of those is probably Newt or Ripley, just like that original.
It was kind of cool seeing that alienish looking creature. I'd like to be able to get freeze frame of that, still of that, and actually look at it a bit closer.
I mean, so people have been pointing out, look at the sheer number of people they've got, or beings that have managed to win against Predators. It must mean they lose loads of time.
And that speaks to the film's disservice to the Predators. Yes, it's a cool concept, but when you do things like that, you diminish their effectiveness as villains by showing all the fucking people or creatures that have apparently killed them. So
I will play devil's advocate for such a scene where, number one, we know in Predators, technically, that we have people, we have the aliens of the Predator species that abduct people that haven't seen the Predator before, that haven't defeated one. So we don't necessarily absolutely know that all of those frozen ones are the ones who defeated them. But even if the Predators are such an old species, and if they are numerous and have had untold number of hunts, then you can still have percentage-wise that it's rare to defeat a predator, but they've been so long and so many of them have had hunts that from time to time that adds up to a huge kind of storage. So there are devil advocate kind of headcanonish type of defenses there you could think of. But yeah, it probably wasn't thought that deeply in that sense. It's more of a kind of wow, big, cool factor.
Also, it's just occurred to me, we're assuming they're all other species. Like 50% of them could be other predators because we saw one of those in the ring. So it could be just like a North Korean dictatorship. No, you're going in the freezer.
It could have been as well that it was made a spectacle of in the arena because these were people that had bested a predator. And yes, potentially the rest could be just random kidnapped, frozen victims, because that has become a very significant part of the extended universe recently, what with the Marvel stuff. And I'd be quite interested to know on the influence of Killer's take on this. Was it because of the Marvel stuff, or was it because of that original intent of the Predators screenwriters, that they were cryogenically frozen and woken up in the time of the Colonial Marines? So I'd be quite interested to know about that.
What do we think about finally, for the first time ever, having a leading type of predator actually survive the film? Because technically, Mr. Warlord
survived.
Yeah, true.
And the Elder at the end of AvP.
This was okay. We can frame it like this: this is the first predator that actually had a scuffle, fought our protagonists, had a fight with them, and survived the end. So yeah, Greyback and Elder at AvP, they were just there to give their thing off. But this is the first predator that had a bit of a fight and survived. So that is interesting. That finally happened in such special type of circumstance. I really was not expecting him to survive.
A bit of a fight. I mean, there were a few moments where it seemed like he really could have killed them if he wanted to, but
he really could have crushed them when he had them both under his feet, or he could have smacked them with the hammer thing that he had rather than just take out the ship. He was definitely playing. He wanted to enjoy that. And yeah, it's nice to see one survive a scuffle, I suppose.
Well, we talked this one out?
Yeah, I think we have. Have any thoughts or overall view of the film changed as we've been talking?
I think I'm still, when I first saw it, I was about between a 7 and an 8. And I think I'm going to, I think I'll give it an 8 because overall I feel like it succeeds. Yeah, we have a lot of nitpicks here from a fan perspective, but I think the normies are going to eat this up, man. I think it's going to do really well again, like it already has. And so it is really cool to see Predator just doing as well as it is right now, especially after Prey, and that aspect makes me excited for Badlands. The big swings with the lore at the end make me a little apprehensive about Badlands at the same time, and that almost kind of adds the excitement with my worry and my excitement like bunched together with that. But judging this film on its merits, I think overall it succeeds as the first major animated film we've had in the franchise. I think even with the issues we've gone over, it works and it's effective, and it's one of the better Predator movies, I would say. So,
Eric?
No, still at 5, maybe even 4 out of 10 for me. It's okay, but it's just okay for me. I don't think I'm going to rewatch it anytime soon, but it's actually made me more apprehensive about Badlands, unfortunately.
Craig?
I still love it. I completely understand all of the flaws and nitpicks, and they are there. They are real, but my overall overall emotional impression that I got from the film is I love it despite the many flaws and nitpicks there, and I just really enjoyed it. So for me, it's still something like a 9 out of 10 for what it is. For what it is, this is what I expected from an animated anthology type of film, especially compared to what exists nowadays. So I liked it. I would have no problem in seeing more either anthology types, though do agree that if it would be a full series where each episode is a own contained story would be better. But either anthologies or more animated entries in the Predator universe, I would have no problem at all. I am happy with what I've seen. And yes, some elements do make me just a slight tad apprehensive of what can be in store for us with Badlands. But at the same time, seeing this, I know that it will definitely be a fun roller coaster type of movie. That part will not be disappointing. So it's only just how far some elements of the lore would be taken. But it has highlighted some worries, but at the same time gave me, in other aspects, assurances that Badlands will certainly be fun. And I'm happy to see that the score is generally good with the audience and that we're having success in new Predator entries. So I'm hoping that whatever comes next for the Predators, that it's better and better, that quality keeps on increasing, that our concerns are mitigated in any future releases. And I just hope that the franchise keeps on being successful, living on. So it's a strange but nice time to be in.
So chatting has reminded me that there are a lot of aspects of this film that I do really, really love and I really like. But the things that I also don't like, really, really don't like. So it kind of levels out for me. So I'd been a little worried. I was like, I don't think I like this. I don't think I enjoyed it that much. But to sit and talk through this with you guys and reinforce those things that I did really like was nice. I do still think it's a 7 out of 10, though. I appreciate them taking the big swings. I appreciate that it hit marks with me. If there's one thing we do know about Dan, it is that he does take on board feedback. He does listen to the fans. You know, we see that with the feral interpretation of the Predator in this. You know, it looks much more traditional. And as a result, I fucking really liked it. I really hope that NECA put out some figures of these because I will be getting one of each of the Predators. Yes, even the fucking Chad Predator, I will still be picking him up. I quite like the Brute. I do want them to play with this concept some more. I do want to see more animated things. I just hope that they give them the time to breathe going forwards. And because that is my main issue with this film is everything's too short, everything's too condensed, and that results in a lot of other problems. So hopefully they'll continue playing with this. Hopefully they'll continue doing big swings, but stop trying to cram so much in one package, in one film, in one entity.
If they do another and we see more time periods, what would be one you want to see? One from each of you. So you go, Aaron.
I know we've just had World War II, but I would like to see a continuation of major conflicts. So if they were to perhaps give us Iwo Jima, the Pacific kind of stuff, or the Battle of the Bulge, or that kind of sort of battle would be fine, or World War I just to make it more brutal, more primal. But I've also been quite curious to see more of Iraq. You know, Hunters 2 I thought was very nice because it played on that albeit just a little bit, but it played on that mythological aspect of the predators that we like, of them being jinn, of them being genies. So I would like to see them do something like that.
Eric, what do you think?
I have some time in the ancient world because it's just not a very explored time period. But whether you'd go for, Rome or Greek or, Casper says Sparta with a 300 or whatever. I mean, that's just open, whatever. But I could definitely see what's happening in Ukraine at the moment because there's literally, there's videos now, actual human safaris that are arranged by certain people in the Russian armed forces. I think all that would actually merge really well into Predator, but I could think that you would run a risk of being
maybe a bit too soon.
it would be in
being
bad
sensitive.
taste. You would be, So probably the ancient world, but at that point you're going to make predators even more primitive. So I don't know. I think probably somewhere that just hasn't been explored. You could go into drug cartels in South America. There's a ton of stuff that happens over there. Never gets headlines. You could go back to what Anna said about the demons who make trophies of man. You go back to basics in that regard.
Like do Sicario, but with a predator or something like that. How about you, Greg?
Well, I also agree with the approach that, something like Rome, ancient Rome, ancient Greek stuff, Sparta always can be good. But when thinking of what hasn't been mentioned, what could be unique, I would like to see something geographically in the region of the Indian subcontinent. A few centuries past time, I don't know exactly which period would have been the best, but I know that in Indian history, they had some really interesting, unique weapons, really interesting, unique melee weapons, very, very decoratively designed and very unorthodox compared to the classical things that are more famous that we know of in Europe and Eastern Asia, of course.
It's not just the weapons. In India, you have a lot of things in ancient scrolls about the gods fighting and stuff.
The mythology, of course, yes. I would love if that aspect of ancient mythology to be explored more in future Predator entries, comparing them to whatever ghosts, demons, and mythological creatures of that time. Absolutely. But seeing a Predator go up against warriors on the Indian subcontinent in some historical previous period, I think would be aesthetically quite interesting. I think that could work to a great degree.
And even if we talk about World War II, there are a number of very different certain places. Like if you go to when the Soviets were invading Finland, that was atrocious. You have the Finnish, they're literally putting Soviet soldiers on stakes and things, but that would suit Predator perfect. It's just about the kind of conflict. Find a conflict that would suit the Predator itself, not just a location, I think. Just what's going on at the time.
I think the locations can be intriguing, though. And for me, I would love to see ancient Egypt. Speaking to your point, Greg, though, we did have Ilphonic's game, Predator Hunter Grounds, has had a number of different Predator DLCs now based on different regions and cultures. And one of their last ones, Exalted, was, I believe, based on ancient Indian aesthetic. But for me, it would be ancient Egypt because I just love that time period of U.S. history and that culture. So, and we've had a number of Predators now, again, in Hunting Grounds, and a number of fan art pieces as well of ancient Egyptian inspired Predators. So I think that could be a really cool era to explore.
You could also, if he's going back in history, take advantage of a natural disaster like Vesuvius or something. So something atrocious happens, but that's the reason the world never finds out about it. It's like everything got covered with lava or whatever.
There was a short in Predator, If It Bleeds, that I really liked that took place in Storm Katrina. I think it was Katrina. It was a storm, and it also involved a cryptid. I'm all about fighting the Predator, fighting some cryptids. So I always liked that short, and that might be one for you, Eric.
Definitely.
And Casper says in the chat, show us how the Predator got a T-Rex skull. So I feel like Bad Blood is going to kind of offer us some sort of version of that, fighting a big ass monster. So I feel like we've got that one coming to us in some fashion or another. But yeah, is that everything, boys?
I think so. We've gone 3 hours now. So
this might rival the Covenant trailer one.
Well, it'll come down to about 2.5 in the edit. depending on how much I get to edit. I don't know if this goes up before I go away or how much attention I get to give it before I go away. But fun times. Do you think Dan will still want to talk to us after this, Adam?
I don't think we were too harsh on it. It was fun when we had Fide on and he's like, come on, guys, I know you're being nice. Give it to me straight. So hopefully Dan's attitude is similar. But overall, I'd say at least 3 out of 4 of us were mostly positive on it.
I think it helped me not being there because he called me out when he was talking to you too.
Yes, he did. He was like, and that other guy that was going on about there not being female war chiefs, fuck him. And I smiled. I was like, yeah, fuck you, Eric. You don't know. You know nothing.
No. As soon as I heard that, I said to myself, fantastic. Can I have some names? I really want to learn that history. And he didn't give any names. So.
But he did his research, you didn't. So
I would like to know who they were. I genuinely would.
I'd still like to talk to him about it, and hopefully he will still talk to us.
And if you're watching this, Dan, apologies and stuff. We're just giving our opinions of the production.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching. Hopefully we'll have a bunch of stuff coming out soon. We've still got, as of recording this, I'm still working on our retrospective interview of Concrete Jungle, the game. Like I said, we recorded an interview with the creative team behind Bad Blood, both of which are fucking ginormous interviews. They're both about 3 hours long, just like this one's coming on to be. If you're listening to this and you don't follow us on Patreon, I have just finished and released our latest genetic memory episode. You may have listened to a previous podcast or two where somebody else was going to be editing it, but I just want to make sure I get credit for having done that work. If you're not a Patreon supporter and you would like to listen to us talk about things that are tangentially related to Alien and Predator, that's the kind of stuff we talk about, Event Horizon. I can't think of anything else to promote or anything like that. I think Adam's going to be working on a lore piece on Predator next, one of the comics. I forget which one it's called. It's the one with the Victorian Predator. What's that series called? Nemesis.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's next on Adam's list. Maybe it'll be out by the time this is out. Who knows?
Is that the Jack the Ripper one?
Yes, it is the Jack the Ripper one, yeah. And yeah, I can't think of anything else to promote. So thank you, everybody, for listening or watching. If you have... Oh, Adam, check iTunes. See if there's been any reviews.
Let me look. One moment.
Do you have Countdown over there, Greg?
We have similar type of game shows, but not the exact one. No.
Okay.
But I have What's Your Countdown.
Okay, yeah. So the jingle means something to you.
Yes, it does.
Okay, good.
Okay, I have a good one. This one is from March on Apple Podcasts, and it says Best Colony War Fan Podcast. Finally, a podcast that appreciates the art that is the 2022 novel Alien Colony War. Aaron is one of the few podcast hosts who is brave enough to admit that putting Amanda on ice was a bold and definitely not terrible choice. There are a ton of podcasts out there who will praise Cold Forge or Charybdis, but these OGs know that art is in the eye of the robo-dog beholder. So, some praise for you there, Aaron.
Which bastards are that? Have they dared to leave a name?
Why do I feel like that is one of our more esteemed members of our forums?
That is Andy G who left that one. So, thank you, Andy G.
Andy G, you're a bellend. How very dare you? And he knows exactly what I was doing. Do we have any genuine ones, Adam?
So I believe Spotify only has ratings. I don't think they have reviews from what I can see here. Where else would it be? Podbean?
No, there'll be nothing on Podbean.
They don't have reviews there?
Oh, there's very little audience on Podbean for us.
Oh, well, I'd have to look. Remind me that for next time. We'll have reviews ready to go. But if you want your review read, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Spotify, I don't know if there's a review, but you can at least leave a star. That's or 5 stars would be nice. But
if folk want to reach out, you can email us at podcast@avpgalaxy.net if you want us to read anything on here or comment on anything or ask us any questions specifically that you'd like us to address. You are more than welcome to email over. Yeah, I've kind of run out of wind here.
Should we just sign off?
Yeah. You can find us on all the usual socials. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. I think that's everywhere. We'll be on there under some variation of AvP Galaxy or Alien versus Predator Galaxy versus as in VS. You can find the hub of our activity on avpgalaxy.net. If you're listening to this, you can also find video versions of our written and audio content available on YouTube. Again, Alien versus Predator Galaxy. Thank you, everybody. This has been Corporal Hicks.
Ridgetop.
Xenomorphine?
Still collating.
And don't avenge me.